My husband of 5 years may have single-handedly imploded not just our marriage, but also my career and the life we built together, as he has suddenly out of nowhere started accusing me of cheating on him, even though I literally never have, nor would I ever do that. Because before this, I thought we had a great relationship, but now literally everything's falling apart and I just don't know what to do. Welcome back to Am I the Jerk? This first story is a handful, dude. Oh my gosh. Seriously, strap in for this one. It is like a bumpy ride down to the bottom. The original poster here goes through one of the worst experiences ever. They're getting gaslit like crazy and they are absolutely going through it. So definitely lock in for this one. It is worth it in the end. I would love to hear your comments on this first story. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk if you haven't already. Hit the bell to turn on notifications. And with that, let's get started. Okay, for starters, I want to say that all the names and locations from this post have been altered just to protect the privacy of others. I met my current husband in 2018 while working in the same office. We got close during COVID lockdown, we got engaged, and we got married in 2021. And just for reference, this is the second marriage for the both of us. We both grew up dirt poor and experienced things no child should ever have to experience. And in a lot of ways, if I'm being honest, we kind of trauma bonded. He was the first person I truly felt I could be myself with. Everything just felt easier together. We shared so many of the same interests, and every day I felt lucky that I found him. During the tail end of lockdown, we took advantage of the low interest rates and bought a brand new house together. And not just any house, but like literally a new build. Neither of us had ever lived in something like that before, and it felt like we were breaking generational cycles. In fact, it was big enough to expand our family. Plus, we did it all on our own. We don't have big families to help us, so we were incredibly proud of what we built. Fast forward to 2023, and we have our first child together. Things were great for a while, and then I started to feel a shift. I can't tell you exactly what changed or pinpoint a specific moment, but it slowly became this like constant walking on eggshells type of feeling. For context, he was raised in South Texas, and I was raised in upstate New York. And he says our parenting styles are different, with him even remarking that he wants our son to be raised more like people in the South. And part of that includes me becoming a stay-at-home mom. But he knew well before we got together that I never wanted that. I previously was married for 10 years, and I share an 18-year-old son with my ex-husband. My ex was physically and verbally awful towards me, if you know what I mean. I wasn't allowed to work or have my own credit card or even have my own car. In fact, I was eventually granted a 3-year protection against him. My current husband knew all of that, but after we had our son, something changed. Being put in a situation that even remotely resembles my previous marriage is incredibly triggering for me. I never want to be in a position again where I'm financially or emotionally trapped. In fact, I don't think I'll ever be able to trust another person 100% because of what I've been through. Now, currently, my husband works 2 jobs and I work 2 jobs as well. On top of preparing to send my oldest to college this fall and raising our 3-year-old kid, life has been completely overwhelming. My husband's main job took a huge hit this year and his hours were cut in half. So seriously, money has been extremely tight. We barely see each other outside of like maybe 30 minutes on weekdays. We've tried to make time for date nights, but we just don't have a village, so everything falls on us. Well, 2 days ago, I put our son to bed like I do every night. I usually fall asleep in his room because our nights are long, and our 3-year-old still doesn't sleep through the night. Things had also already been tense because I'd been asking my husband for more help like mentally and physically. I seriously feel like I'm living in a pressure cooker sometimes. But he just brushed off the conversation, left the house to go for a walk, and then told me that he had a feeling something else was going on because it couldn't just be stress causing me to feel this overwhelmed. Well, while I was asleep in our son's room, my husband went through my phone. He said that my phone looked too clean, so he decided to unlock and search through all of my deleted text messages. I then woke up to him screaming at me and waving my phone in my face. Now, the message he found was a text from a male coworker 3 weeks earlier, and it was like some inappropriate joke that he had sent me, and I deleted it immediately. And honestly, I forgot that it even existed. I've never had a phone or text conversation with this coworker, and I've barely spoken to him at work because he's still relatively new. I can't even remember that particular like morning event and why he would have even like asked me if I was okay. I have a lot going on in my life, so sometimes I just come into work a little bit late and a little bit disheveled. And it's at this point that a lot of like context is really needed here. So basically, a coworker messaged me and said, "Good morning, are you okay?" And I sent a gif of someone crying dramatically in the shower. He then says kind of an inappropriate joke to me, and I just respond back by saying, "Gross. Tell Todd that he needs to water Samantha's plants because the poor things are dry." The coworker then said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you'd laugh." And I just responded by saying, "Well, my husband's right here." And just for reference here, Samantha's out on medical leave and she has been for several months. She's working part-time from home, but she likes to keep her large plants in her office. Now, Todd is an intern at her office, and she gave Todd her plants and said, "Please keep these alive." But it's important to know that Todd is 20 years old and he's doing a terrible job. And this is the part of the story as the narrator where I'm going to jump in and say that you're probably going to be able to infer infer what this coworker said that was kind of inappropriate, as I did leave it out of the story on purpose because it is kind of like right on that edge where it's like, oh, probably can't say that. So just bear with me and hopefully we're on the same page in a second. The original poster goes on to say, so when I water the plants, I'm the one that tends to her plants, and one of those plants likes to get watered by being sprayed and squirted with a water bottle. It's like a large palm or large lake tree kind of thing, so it has me spraying a lot of water on it. I do that every other week, and I add water to the base of the pot once a week, so it gets water from the roots up. And these are literally her instructions. The coworker who messaged me this really crude joke, his desk is right next to Todd's desk, and there's like this small divider in between. So he basically heard me spraying and squirting and watering the plants, so that's kind of where his crude comment comes from. So to recap, coworker saw me squirting water on the plants, he said a really crude joke, and I said, hey, I don't really like that, that's gross. Anyways, moving on. Basically, I didn't like that he texted me that. Like seriously, I didn't like it at all. I then brought it up the next time I had lunch with Samantha. I said, hey, look what he sent me, isn't that disgusting? And she goes, yeah, that's really disgusting, guys are gross. I then deleted the text message and I went about with my life. So with that in mind, here is the bombshell. My husband is 100% convinced that I'm having an affair with that coworker. In fact, he took it a step further by saying that he told his coworkers and his boss that I'm having an affair and even showed the text message thread as proof. He even took a picture of it with his phone and showed them and his family. And they all agree and it looks like I'm having an affair suddenly. And my God, the whole next day, he's just fighting with me. I keep going to the bathroom sobbing at work because I said nothing's going on and that I have nothing to hide. It was literally just a crude joke that this stupid coworker made. He then told me that I need to tell human resources if I wanted to save my marriage. But I told him, look, it's just a joke and that there's no reason that anyone needs to lose their job. Well, it's at this moment he gave me an ultimatum. I either need to text my coworker and let him know that that text wasn't okay and to set a clear boundary that this is not okay. Please do not involve me in that kind of language ever again. And you know what? That's exactly what I did. I just went ahead and I did that. But then he starts going through my call logs and sending me phone numbers, asking me to look them up on my phone and to screenshot who they belong to and then send them to him. And so just to try and go along with it, I did exactly that. But here's the thing. He keeps calling me a liar and threatening divorce, blaming this whole thing on me and that he's lost all of my trust. Oh, and by the way, he still wants me to go to human resources for like the paper trail, you know, in case my coworker tries to, as my husband would say, attack me at work physically this time. He says that I left the door wide open for my coworker. And he also says that I can't be alone with my son because he doesn't trust me. And that if I'm alone with my son, he's taking my car keys if I had to take my son anywhere. Like I literally have to let him know about it beforehand. I've got to send him text messages as to when I'm leaving or arriving, as if I'm keeping like a detailed catalog of like what I'm doing and where I'm going. We've already shared each other's locations and we already share each other's passwords, but now he wants my phone to be like an open book to him whenever he chooses. Like it's even gotten to the point where I never reach out to my friends because I'm always protecting my husband's image. But this time I did reach out to my friends. I asked them if I was in the wrong somehow and they said no, and that they don't understand why my husband wants a divorce and has even gone to this extent to like tell his entire office, his boss and his family that I'm suddenly cheating. In fact, things have gotten so bad that he's even asked me to leave his house. And remember, we bought that house together. That's not just his house. He has me being interrogated all day. We both called off work and he's called off of his day shift and his night shift for both jobs. And in fact, if I'm sleeping, he just wakes me up and he starts the interrogation all over again. He's done this probably like, I don't know, 6 times now, and I don't know what to do besides just drop to my knees and cry and just go along with whatever he wants to try and show him that I'm not cheating. I'm not having an affair. These few text messages are literally nothing. Well, fast forward and my work tried calling me a few times and it was a very busy day for us and they needed my help on something like right away. I'd also already let human resources know that I was dealing with a family crisis and that no, I can't make it in right now, but my coworker still kept calling me. But when my husband saw that, he really wanted me to answer the phone because he believes I'm probably sleeping with that coworker too. But it's like, what else or like what other reason would they be calling me? He says he doesn't trust a single thing right now and he's being super paranoid. Now, I didn't answer, but they just kept calling me. Eventually, they texted me asking me for my passwords, but I told them, hey, I'm dealing with a family crisis. If you need anybody, then contact my coworker, like get to somebody else. They eventually apologized, but I'm worried that I'm now going to lose my job over this, which by the way, my husband is completely okay if I lose my job, even though in like past months, I pull in more than he does, and we can't financially afford for me to not work. He also he keeps showing people these messages and saying, oh, I'm going to call your coworker's wife, telling her that, oh yeah, we're having an affair, and even even pulling our neighbors into it. And I've begged him not to, but he just keeps saying to every single person that he talks to that, yeah, oh, it's the same thing. Oh yeah, I'm a cheater. I'm lying. I just can't be trusted at all. Now, here's the thing. We don't live in a big town, so this is gonna get out really quick. He says that his coworkers and his boss have like unbiased opinions, and pretty much everybody agrees with him, but the only people that agree with me are my friends and family because I had to pull them in for emotional support. So with all that in mind, I really feel lost right now. I don't know what to do, and I'm willing to answer any questions just to make myself clear, because I feel like this is completely blown up in my face, and I seriously just don't know what to do anymore. Okay, holy crap, this guy is like out of his mind. Like, there's so many red flags here, it's not even funny, and I really hope you see it because this is just so glaring. First off, the only thing that your husband's right about is that, yeah, you probably should have gone to HR about this coworker, because the joke, which I couldn't really include in this story, but you can probably infer from my lengthy explanation, was not something that anybody should have said. Like, that really was inappropriate, and that guy should be punished for that. And it was also pretty obvious that he was trying to make some kind of like inappropriate joke, so it's like, what are we doing, dude? Come on, be professional. But aside from that, dude, your husband is out of his mind. He is crazy for thinking that you're cheating on him. It's almost like he's searching for a reason for you to like lose your job and become like a stay-at-home mom, which is like, okay, what are we doing here? You know for a fact that your wife doesn't want that. She wants to have a career and like, I don't know, build a life with you. She doesn't want to stay at home and just watch the kid. Like, that's not the future that she wants. So for him to double back and like take away your autonomy and like your money, and even going as far as saying like, oh, you can't be with our kid. I'm taking the car keys if you're with him. Like, what are we doing right now, dude? You can't do that to me. That's unfair and that's completely inappropriate. And that's also like the first big step towards like, oh yeah, your husband is really mistreating you. He's essentially like caging you in the house and like pulling you back away from society, away from your coworkers and your friends. He's trying to ruin your reputation and make it so, yeah, you can't get a job anywhere else. And then you're stuck dealing with his crap and you have nowhere to run to. Like, I don't know about you, but this sounds like it's going in a very scary direction. And by scary direction, I mean like going towards like the way your previous husband probably treated you, which is not good, dude. Like, that's really scary. You don't deserve that. And I've got to say, other people in the comment section of this story have pretty much said the same thing I'm about to say, but holy crap, does it sound like your husband's cheating on you. It really seems like he's the one being unfaithful in this marriage, and he's now trying to like catch you on something to like justify why he wants to divorce you, when it's like, dude, there's nothing going on here. This guy is digging for any reason to break up with you. Because why else would he have like this sudden shift in his behavior? I get that people have bad days. I'm not saying anything about that. Like, sure, I have bad days just like anybody else, but I'm not about to like, I don't know, destroy my relationships overnight. I'm not going to go digging through my partner's phone and be like, oh, I got to find something on you. Your phone's too clean. There's got to be something I can catch you on. Like, what a maniac, dude. This guy is like looking and searching for reasons to not like you. He's actively trying to destroy your career. Like, honestly, in my opinion, it looks like he's trying to build an alibi for himself. So when he does divorce you and this sudden, like, I don't know, cheating partner comes out of nowhere, he can be like, yeah, and then this other lady, she helped me get over my awful ex. Like, he's trying to paint the picture as like he's the victim when he's probably the assailant. Like, bro, this is like awful, man. I'm so sorry you're going through this. So truly, your husband is a controlling lunatic. He's trying to ruin your job and your relationships in this small town and essentially drive you into like, I don't know, isolation and having nothing. Even possibly going as far as like losing your kid. Like, that is awful in my opinion. So I know for a fact if I was in your shoes, I would be lawyering up, dude. I would do anything I could to make sure I have some kind of representation, because the way he's acting is very scary, and I seriously wish you the best in dealing with this, because this sounds like an absolute nightmare. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk if you haven't already. We would love to have your subscription because we're having a good time over here, man. We're making videos, we're interacting with the community, we're hearing your stories, so please share them all with us. In fact, if you want to share your story, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit. That really is the best place on the internet to have your voice known. And it's great because sometimes the stories are really funny, sometimes they're really sad, and they're not necessarily as like intense as that first story. Like, dude, can we talk about that again? That was like something, dude. Holy crap. I can't imagine being in the original poster's shoes. Like, that's some crazy stuff, dude. Like, holy crap. Leave a comment about that, by the way. I would love to hear what you have to say. Speaking of comments, I don't know how to say your name properly, but I'm just going to say Simba was like, hey, can I get a hi, please? Yeah, you are going to get a hi. And you know what? I'm also going to heart that message. So bam, how you like that, baby? Hello, we love you, and thank you so much for subscribing. And before we continue with the story and on with the video, I need you to go and subscribe to Am I the Genius? They're like the cool coworker who always has snacks in the drawer where you're like, dude, I need some pretzels or I need some chocolate right now. And they're like, bro, I got you. And they open up the door and like, it's right there. And you're like, oh, mine. You just stuff your face full of like Reese's Pieces. That's Am I the Genius? You are going to love them. They're great. We love what they're making, and I know you're going to like them as well. But without further ado, let's get back to the video and on to the next story. My brother made out with a girl that I have a huge crush on, and now I feel completely torn apart because I was planning on confessing to her literally the night that they started making out, and at this point I'm so heartbroken that I just don't know what to do. Here's what's happening. Okay, I want to start off by saying that this girl is one of my best friends, and I've had a massive crush on her for a long time now. For a bit of backstory, my brother just moved into our city, and he's my roommate now. He came out to the club that she and I were at last night, and they both drank a lot. Now, I can't drink personally for health reasons, but because they drank a lot, they ended up making out several times and dancing together in front of me. And I gotta be honest, it was really hard to watch, and I felt like my heart was breaking. There are times I really feel like my friend and I have a spark, but I've always been nervous to say or try something because I left an 8-year relationship about half a year ago, and I was so scared of her thinking that I just need any person to be in my life and not that I liked her for her. I guess I also get nervous about being ready to be serious because if we were together, it would be serious to me, and I wouldn't want to mess that up. At the same time, I feel like a total idiot because for the last 6 weeks, I was seeing this other girl that I would tell my friend about, and when my brother and her both asked about each other vaguely, I never shut it down completely. Last night was going to be the night I tried to make a move, and now I'm laying in bed feeling so stupid for messing this up, and I feel like if I say how I feel now, I'm just jeopardizing my friendship and my brother's feelings. I don't know what to do, but it feels like it could possibly be too late, and I might just need to move on. We're both going to a party tonight where it'll just be us, so I thought maybe I would say what's in my heart, but I'm honestly not sure at this point. So be honest with me, do I tell her how I feel, or did I lose my chance? And what could I possibly say to my brother, who I now feel like has feelings for her too? What should I do? Okay, bro, I just gotta be honest with you. It's over, you missed your shot, and you need to move on. She made out with your brother. They've got drunk and danced together, dude. You also made it very clear that you're seeing somebody else, so like, why would your brother know that, hey, you've got a thing for this lady? In his mind, he's probably thinking, oh, she's fair game, I'll make a move. And he definitely did. So it's like, dude, if you really felt that way, you really should have said something way sooner. And it's unfortunate, dude, because it sounds like you really liked her. And trust me, dude, oh my God, I have been there. I'm the king of waiting too long and then looking back and being like, oh my God, I missed my chance. And it is what it is, man. I mean, you can't hang on to this stuff forever. People move on if they don't think you're interested in them. And it's just something that happens, man. So like, hey, you missed your shot, but it's not the end of the world. But with that, in my opinion, I think confessing any kind of feelings for her now would be a huge mistake. And it really will result in how you described it. You're going to hurt your brother's feelings and you're going to ruin your friendship, which in my opinion is probably all you have left. And that's the thing I would definitely hold on to if I was in your shoes. Am I the jerk for telling my coworker to get over herself and get to work? Because sometimes she just straight up refuses to work, and it's really starting to piss me off, and I just don't know if I can take this anymore. Here's basically what happened. Okay, for a bit of background about myself, I'm a 24-year-old female, and I work as a medical receptionist and like an administrative assistant at a mental health center. There are 4 of us working the reception desk, and I've been working there for close to like 2 years now, which basically essentially makes me like a veteran at this place. Like seriously, the next guy who's worked here the longest has been here for maybe 6 months. And as you can probably guess, it's an extremely stressful job. The higher-ups are not great, and it's just a complete cluster pretty much all the time. It's been getting worse lately, and we're losing employees willing to work the reception desk due to the specific clientele, as you can probably imagine. Now, I do have one specific coworker who's like 2 years younger than me, who's been working there for about 2 months or so. And overall, I was always pretty happy with her performance. But lately, however, she's been constantly complaining about a guy working with us who's been trying to take the easy way around some of the more difficult tasks, which, holy crap, I fully understand, and I would not have an issue with it if she wasn't acting like a total brat. She comes to work tired and then goes and takes up one of the offices to have a nap in the morning. Then she sits around doing nothing for the next hour because she's finally ready to start doing her thing. Well, today I was filing some like medical papers from last week due to not being able to like finish it on time, and I kindly asked her if she could call one patient while I'm at it, but it's here that she looked up the person, saw that they've already been called, and just straight up refused. What she didn't see, however, was that the phone call in the system was like 4 weeks ago. I tried explaining that the patient needs a phone call today and that she could just look at the date, but she just started going off about how nobody's doing anything around here, referring specifically to the guy I mentioned earlier, and saying that someone clearly just didn't want to make that phone call yesterday. It took me like maybe 15 minutes of back and forth, constantly just repeating, hey, look at the date, just look at the date, please. Until you know what? I finally snapped at her. I told her straight up, like, like, you need to get over yourself and start working like an adult should. Well, when I did that, she immediately shut down and made the phone call right away. I kept filing my paperwork, and after a long stretched moment of silence, I apologized and said I shouldn't have raised my voice. And you know what? If I'm being honest, I feel awful. I try to be understanding, and I don't like snapping at people, and I really make sure to work on myself in therapy before, because let me tell you something, I had extreme anger issues growing up, but this time, I just simply couldn't handle constantly repeating myself for 15 minutes straight. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? Did I go too far by snapping at my coworker? Because right now, I just don't know what to make of this. Okay, dude, in my opinion, you didn't do anything wrong. If I worked at a place like that and I was under such stress all the time and my coworker's sitting there being like, I don't want to do my job. Dude, I would snap at them too. Like, holy crap. You have a turnover where nobody sticks around, dude. The longest person who's worked there besides you has been there for 6 months. So imagine every other month finding a new coworker that you're like, bro, I wonder how long you're gonna last. Never having anybody to bounce ideas off of or like how to run the office. Because guess what? That's you. You're the most experienced person there, whether you like it or not. Meanwhile, you've got some idiot sitting next to you being like, oh, I don't want to work. I also don't think I should be the one to do it. Like, bro, at that point, she might as well quit. Like, seriously. And trust me, those jobs really can suck the soul right out of you. Like, I'm not saying that it doesn't, because I've worked in similar situations and whoo boy, it sucks. You're dealing with crappy patients all day. You deal with managers who are just completely incompetent, who quite literally, and I mean literally, don't know what they're talking about or even what they're doing. Like, I had a manager once who didn't give me any autonomy over my job. Literally, any decision-making process had to go through her, and she didn't even work at the office, dude. We had to call her. It was so annoying. So, bro, I get where you're coming from. So I can only imagine dealing with a coworker like this at my former job, because I definitely think I would have snapped as well. So no, you're not the jerk. They needed correcting. And if they don't like it, they can quit like everybody else. An entitled man-child freaks out on me as well as my interns, claiming that because I'm a woman, I can't possibly be the supervisor over this department. But I simply wasn't taking that sitting down, as I put this entitled man-child in his place and kicked him out of my office altogether. Here's what happened. So about 5 years ago, I worked at the International Center of a university in the United States. To give some background information, I am an Asian female, I'm 5'1" in height, and though I was in my early 30s at the time, I did still look quite young, and was often mistaken for being in my early 20s or late teens. My main job responsibility at the time was the recruitment, training, and management of about a dozen international student interns who worked the front desk. Anyways, we had been swamped that morning, so I hadn't had time to go out to eat lunch. I got a sandwich at our campus vending machine and sat down in the break room. The break room was always cold due to the AC blasting through the room, so I put on a comfy university jacket. I kept it at my desk just to wear during break. I kept the break room door open to keep an ear out on the front and let my interns know that they could still pop in to ask any questions that they want. I had hired a couple of new students that month, and they were still learning. A few minutes later, I heard a man's voice yell something along the lines of, "No, no, no, you do not understand. You are stupid. Stupid." The childish outcries exclaimed in a grown man voice made me immediately stand up and rush to the front desk area without even remembering to take my jacket off. The man was literally wagging his finger at my intern and yelling while almost comically stomping his feet. I interjected his tantrum and introduced myself as the intern supervisor. I gave my name and position, and I told him I could assist him with the issue. The man immediately looked me up and down, scoffed a short no, and then he turned right back to the intern and asked her to call the supervisor, as he needed to ask someone who actually works here, not just some young girl like the intern who sits there at the front repeating nonsense. It wasn't my first rodeo with unnecessarily angry students, so I calmly gestured at my intern to step away, and I planted myself directly in front of him. That made him change his rant towards me, saying, "Listen, I know you Chinese want to help each other, but my issue is urgent, so I need to talk to your supervisor. Call your supervisor and he can sign the form I need signed." Yes, both my intern and I were Asian, but neither of us were Chinese. I hate when people over-enunciate when speaking to me. My thoughts often immediately go to the fact that English is my first language, as evident by the fact that I just spoke to you. Also, it really upsets me that he assumed the supervisor would be male. I did my best to remain calm, however, and I confirmed the issue. Oh, so you're looking for a travel signature? If you go online and submit the form, you can get that taken care of. But this guy starts screaming, "No, you don't understand, idiot." He then proceeds to go on a rapid rant, saying that I must get a real staff member who actually works here, instead of giving him the same instructions again, because he needed his signed right now. How? Because he wanted to go out of town tonight, and surely the school didn't want to make him, a student who pays such high tuition, to have to come back on campus just to get a signature before he leaves the country after his road trip. He then asked me how much money he gives to the school. He then went on a really racist rant about me and basically my coworkers, and at that point I had had enough. I raised my hand and put my palm out in front of his face for a second to stop his ongoing rant. I looked at him and I said, again, I am the supervisor in this area, and I hear your issue. My intern here has given you the instructions for this form that you need signed, but you want expedited service simply because you do not want to come back to our office on another day to pick it up. Is that correct? Okay, then no. Let me continue. Unfortunately, that cannot be arranged, so please go home and submit the form online, and you can wait 2 to 3 business days for a response. He started to speak again, but I put my hand out again immediately, maintaining eye contact, and picked up the phone. Also, sir, if you do not leave immediately, I will be calling campus security to escort you out of this building for bothering me and my staff members. But before you go, just so you know, I will be noting in your form that you are missing a certain number of days from school. Know that you must maintain your full-time student status for your visa, as you have kindly told us of your planned weeks of absence. So please be ready to submit documentation of why this was an excused absence from your classes. Lastly, do not insult my staff again, or you will be banned from entering this office ever again. He stood there stunned for a few seconds, then started to say something again, but I then proceeded to dial the number on the phone, and that is when he ran out of the building. This may not have been the best solution ever to a yucky situation, but this was the first time I kicked a student out of the office, so I was a bit shaken up about it. The best part of the story, though, is what happened next. My boss at the time walked in a few minutes afterwards and asked me to come talk to her. I thought I was in trouble for some reason, but she actually asked me instead if everything was okay, because she met a rude international student outside. Apparently, the rude man had run into my boss outside, and he had asked her if she happens to know who is the boss of the girl in there, and if she knew how he could talk to him. My boss said that she was the supervisor of the woman who works in there, and asked if she could help. The man apparently then said something along the lines of how she then needed to find him the man highest up the chain because his issue demanded real work. He was rude enough that my boss actually did call the campus police to escort him out of the campus property. She told me that next time, the moment he raises his voice, I do not need to even engage him in conversation, but can just kick him out immediately, as he was forewarned that this is what will happen next time. So overall, that situation was ridiculous, and his attitude, demeanor, and the way he was talking to me and my interns really was incredibly upsetting. Wow, that guy was seriously a jerk. He hit like all the marks of being just an absolute jerk. He said some awful sexist and racist things, and he also went off on this tangent also he could try and get some kind of leeway on a trip that he clearly did not get approved through his school visa. So good for you for standing your ground and telling this guy to take a hike, because honestly, no one deserves to get treated like that in the slightest, and this guy absolutely had it coming. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My friends don't want me dating in the slightest, and I feel like they're being very controlling and overly aggressive towards me, and I don't know what to do. So for context, I am single for the first time since I was 19 years old and a sophomore in college. I dated a man for 6 years until October 2021, when I finally broke it off because the relationship turned severely toxic due to his addiction issues. He is now sober and we are still good friends, and I'm honestly proud of him. Now, even a week later, I spent some quality time with someone I knew in middle school and high school, and we spent our time together, and 3 months later, we are now in a relationship. He was a bare minimum boyfriend, and even though he was nice and kind, he didn't really treat me the way that you should. All my friends encouraged this relationship and said it would be good for me, but in November 2022, he broke up with me, and although it was for the best, I obviously was heartbroken. It's been 3.5 months since that incident, and I am thriving. I've lost 23 pounds, I've dyed my hair, and I'm doing great at work and my social life, and I'm finally saving money. Now here's where the issue comes in. My friends aggressively don't want me to entertain the thought of anything potentially romantic or anything else with another guy. They are constantly telling me I need time to be alone for a year or more, that I must be single, and I need to learn to be alone and love myself first and foremost out of a relationship. And these are all women in their mid to late 20s. None of my guy friends have echoed this sentiment in the slightest. This is all fine and dandy to me. I don't want a relationship, and honestly, it would take a lot for anyone to get me to even consider committing to them again. I just have a lot of stuff to work through from my childhood and from toxic relationships. friends. The issue comes in though, for me, that it feels almost controlling and overly aggressive from some of my friends. For example, I downloaded some dating apps because I was bored, and when someone messaged me something wildly gross and inappropriate, I immediately would screenshot it and send it to my group chat and laugh about it. Now, most of my friends laughed, but my one friend immediately lectured me for even opening a dating app and told me that I shouldn't even have them on my phone and I need to delete my profile. Now, mind you, I don't actually go on them, nor am I actively trying to meet someone. Sometimes I'm just bored. I don't know how to explain it. When my friends found out that I had a one-night stand, half of them were excited for me and the other half were disappointed. I was asked out on a date recently, and most of my friends told me that I need to say no and that I shouldn't be going on any dates whatsoever. They again reiterated that I need to be alone and I need to be single for a year or more. Now, I do want to be single, but I don't see an issue going on a date with someone, especially an old friend I reconnected with and I know is a good person. If I went on a date with anyone right now, I would be very upfront that I do not want anything serious. But if something slowly naturally progresses, I don't want to stop it. I understand where they are coming from, but it has now gotten to the point that I don't even want to tell them what is going on in my life. And God forbid I actually develop a crush on someone. I just know that they would not be happy with me and they would be very disappointed in me. I now feel like I'm making choices based on not upsetting my friends versus what is best for me. What should I do? This is definitely a tricky situation because instinctively it really seems like you should do whatever you want and you really should be able to date whoever you want. But in that same vein of thought, it really seems like your friends are kind of worn out of you having bad relationships. Like, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like you share everything with your friends, even the disgusting things that people send you on Tinder. And I bet more than anything else, they're probably just tired of you getting your heart broken and then having to be the people to help you pick up the pieces. So them telling you to be single is probably less of them trying to be controlling or overly aggressive, but more so trying to protect you as well as trying to protect their own sanity. I mean, it really does sound like the original poster is cycling through relationships that are slowly destroying them. And maybe your friends are just tired of hearing about all this stuff that's going on that really seems to be self-inflicted issues. So maybe there's some truth to what your friends are saying. Maybe waiting a little bit before things go south would do you a lot of good. Because from the sounds of it, I really do think your friends are tired of what's going on. And they not only want the best for you, but also they want the best for themselves. My entitled manager tries to get rid of me by Friday, but then asks for me to work more on Saturday. But I decide to maliciously comply, leaving her out to dry as I say, nope, my last day's Friday. And years later, I now see how satisfying that decision truly was. Here's what happened. So for a little bit of background, I work in the film and TV industry. At the time of this story, I was working an entry-level position called the production assistant, or PA for short, and this was all on a failing TV show. My duties included office upkeep, stocking the kitchen, research for coworkers, various paperwork, picking up supplies from vendors, and picking up lunch for everyone in the department, among a list of other tasks. Now, I really liked my immediate boss, who we will call Coordinator 1. The two of us had a system to keep the office running, and we were starting to become really good friends. The problem, though, involved our department head, who was incredibly discriminatory based on people's skin color as well as their gender. And this was all at the height of the Me Too movement as well. After calling us darling one too many times, as well as winking at us, sneaking his girlfriend into the office, and flipping through Tinder on company time, Coordinator 1 reported him to the higher-ups. But in typical Hollywood fashion, they gave him a gentle slap on the wrist and sent him back to the department. So Coordinator 1 left the show in disgust. So once Coordinator 1 left, Coordinator number 2 stepped in. Now, I knew number 2, and I knew that I wouldn't get along immediately. She had been fired from her previous TV show for attitude problems. On her first day, she chewed me out for, and I kid you not, hanging the actor photos 11 inches too low on the wall. And it only got worse from there. This woman sucked up to the creepy department head, found faults with everyone around her, and loved power trips. She quickly made herself a nuisance to everyone in the department. But the creepy department head was too busy with Tinder to do anything. Between her constant berating, treating me like I was stupid, and unprofessional rudeness, she made my life a living nightmare. The final straw came when she screamed at me in front of the entire department for a small mistake. I almost packed my bag and walked out right then and there. And you know what? In hindsight, I really should have. But she told me I'd be replaced at the end of the month, so I thought I'd hang in there and collect a paycheck while I could. From then on, I counted down the days and made no attempt to hide my misery. The thing is, the TV show had barely started filming, and we were already severely behind behind schedule. The poor construction department was building sets 24/7, and the first episode was supposed to air in the next few weeks. For everyone in our department, this meant extremely long hours and working 6 days a week, which is not my problem. I was leaving soon anyways. In fact, coordinator number 2 reminded me of that last week. They said to me, "Friday is your last day." It ended up being a nightmare of a week. More long hours and running behind schedule. The department would need to work another Saturday. Well, Friday came along, and I gleefully counted down the hours. At the end of the day, coordinator number 2 realized her mistake. She hustled over to me on my way out the door, mind you, and said to me, "Can you work on Saturday as well?" And this is when my malicious compliance came into play. I said to her, "Nope, you said Friday's my last day." And that's when she got all huffy. She said to me, "I'm just trying to get you some extra money." Now, giving up 1 day of my measly PA paycheck was well worth the look on her face when I said, "No thanks. Friday's my last day. Bye now." And after I said that, I walked out to happily never see her again. I took a job on a much better TV show a few weeks later with the nicest crew ever. To this day, I've worked on lots of other shows, and I always warn my coworkers to not ever work with her. It turns out she has a bad reputation around town, even without my help. And what was the fallout after I left? Now that there was no PA working Saturday, coordinator number 2 had no choice but to do both her job and mine. Years later, and I'm now a coordinator, and I can tell you it's a job that keeps you busy. There's no way I'd be able to get anything done without the help of my amazing PAs. So it gives me extreme satisfaction to know that she had to get off her high horse, halt her very important emails as she put it, and go get everyone lunch and snacks, all the way up until my replacement was found. And that idea in and of itself was so worth quitting that job. Good for the original poster. That coordinator number 2 sounds like an absolute nightmare, and they seriously sound like a jerk across the board. And you can tell someone's an awful manager when they go on power trips like that and treat people lower than them like absolute garbage. Like, that is pretty clear evidence that you're not a good person and you are going to be such a nuisance and an awful thing to deal with on a daily basis. Like, these film sets sometimes go for 12 hours at a time. It is nothing to shake at. Like, it really is long hours. So to have to deal with someone like that all day, every day would seriously be obnoxious and not worth the time. So if I was in the shoes of the original poster, I would do the exact same thing. I would be like, "Nope, Friday's my last day, I'm out of here." Because it's honestly just not worth it. And if anything, you being let go by Friday only reflected poorly on coordinator number 2. So in a roundabout way, the original poster aided in this person's downfall in the end. My boyfriend jokingly said he wanted to break up with me after he said that I was lying and that I was actually going behind his back to see someone else. And after it all got revealed that he was coordinating with my sister to pull this prank on me, I'm left feeling so unbelievably hurt and disgusted, and I seriously don't know what to do. So my boyfriend thinks I'm a complete liar and has been calling me that for the past few weeks. He believes other people's stories over mine. He is close friends with my sister, and while I don't know what she tells him, I do notice that he believes her over me. Last night, I was supposed to come over to his house to spend time with him and go to the store, and I thought we were going to see each other early, about 7 o'clock p.m. So I started to get ready. I was waiting for him for hours to text me when he came over because he was out and wouldn't be home until 10 o'clock or something like that, and told me to leave at 10:10 because he believed he'll be home by then. My sister came over to my house around 8 o'clock while I was getting dressed to drop something off and left seconds later. Earlier this same day, my sister told me she had been terrified because she said that she felt like her ex was following her at her home. I told my mother about it, and around that time, my sister stopped answering the phone. So my mom got worried and told her I would drive past her house on my way to see my boyfriend. Around 10 o'clock p.m., I get some gas. I drive past my sister's house, then to his house. While I was leaving from driving past my sister's house, he calls me and asks what I'm doing, which I then explained. I get to his house and he starts questioning how I'm dressed. Because of the way I was dressed, he told me that I went out to another guy's house before coming to his. I mean, I really dressed up to come see him, and I felt like I always dressed up like that, but in his mind, I don't. And I was apparently dressed too differently and much better than he expected. No matter what I told him though, he didn't believe me. I slept over at his house and woke up and went home before he got up for work. It was a good night and a good time until this afternoon, when he calls me to tell me that I'm a liar and that it is over. He said that he just got done speaking to my sister, and according to her, I didn't leave the house at 10 p.m., but instead, apparently, I left at 8 p.m. She didn't talk to me the entire day, and I didn't come from my sister's house when he called. I tried to explain everything and send screenshots screenshots, as well as some kind of proof, but he wasn't trying to hear it and told me it was over. He told me he was tired of my lying and that when I'm ready to have a real conversation about things, only then can we talk. He then hung up on me. I have more proof of me leaving the house, but he refuses to see it. I tried to talk to my sister, and she confirmed everything I said, but thinks he must have gotten some parts that she said confused. She didn't know that I drove by her house, but did mention that she did see me at 8 p.m., but said that she didn't say that was the time that I left. Hours all before this happened, he called me, but I was asleep, then texted me to never text him again, stating that he doesn't want to talk to me anymore, all because I didn't answer the phone right when he called. And now everything's led up to this. I've been trying to call and text him, but he won't answer. I sent him screenshots of proof, and he left my text undelivered, which is rarely like him. Fast forward, and he called me last night to tell me that he was just joking about everything and just didn't understand why I was lying. I was trying to get an understanding on what was going on and try to talk about it, but he's pretending like none of this happened and keeps changing the subject to something else. Apparently, it was a joke from both of them, and this is the second breakup joke that they've done on me. I accuse them both of having something going on, and my sister thinks my boyfriend and I have mental issues. But honestly, this entire situation was so upsetting, and I seriously don't know what to do. So let me just get this straight. Your boyfriend as well as your sister went behind your back, coordinated some joke of him breaking up with you, and then collectively came back together to be like, psych, just kidding. Like, that is unbelievably toxic. And I think your suspicions of your boyfriend as well as your sister having something going on is probably accurate, because it really screams that they're definitely going around behind your back. I mean, this guy wouldn't even look at screenshots, he wouldn't look at any kind of proof, but instead he wants to play games. And these are games that are at your expense and your happiness. I know if I was in your shoes, I would be so upset not only with my sister for lying to me, but also for my boyfriend treating me like garbage and lying about wanting to break up. He sounds like a basket case, and I really think you deserve a lot better than somebody who's just gonna use your relationship as a running joke and completely push aside your feelings and your mental well-being. You seriously deserve better than that, and your boyfriend does not sound like a good person. An entitled guest gets up in my face, screams at me, and makes me cry. So I cuss him out, I flip him the bird, and I walk out, quitting on the spot. Here's what happened. So it was a Sunday morning of my shift, meaning I'm gonna be working alone. With a pretty high turnover rate, I was one of the longest working employees there, so my manager gleefully deemed me manager on duty while she was not on site. A couple attempts to check in at around 10 o'clock in the morning. We had a full house the night before. I kindly let them know that check-in time is at 3 p.m., but I would happily let them check in early once a room became available. I showed them the lobby with a large screen TV and coffee station where they were more than welcome to hang out, and I also offered to take down their phone number if they would rather take advantage of the many nearby shopping and dining options that we had in the area while their rooms were still being cleaned. They obliged and went on their way, leaving their phone number behind. They then returned approximately 20 minutes later. They said, "We're here to check in," very matter-of-factly. A little caught off guard, I re-explained that checkout wasn't until 11 o'clock in the morning, and housekeeping would need some time to clean the room, but I would get them in as soon as possible. Even offered to go grab a few snacks from the closed kitchen for them to enjoy while they waited. The man at this point became incredibly irritable and told me that was unacceptable, and he demanded an upgrade to a suite for their troubles. I of course apologized and explained that we were unable to accommodate that request, and reiterated the reason for the situation to him, and politely offered the same solutions as before. But he grew more irate and not only demanded an upgrade, but he now wanted their night comp for free because their room was not ready when they tried to check in. He demanded to speak to a manager, and at that point a part of me crumbled inside when I had to explain to him that I was the manager on duty, but also followed up that I could leave a message for the GM to contact him first thing in the morning once she got in. Now I'm timid even to this day, but at the age of 18 several years back, I really didn't do well with being yelled at. I'm apologizing, my voice is shaking, I'm explaining again that they reserved a certain type of room and I would still gladly let them know once that became available. Guests are now lining up behind the counter at this point, many of them looking pretty uncomfortable, just being witnesses to the situation themselves. I kindly asked the couple if they would mind stepping to the side so I could help the others while we waited for their room. But he refuses and tells me that he will not allow me to help anyone else until I grant him his demand of a free suite with immediate check-in. I again tell him that's not possible, and I try to excuse myself to speak to the person behind him. He steps in front of me anytime I try to take a step to the side to just make eye contact with the woman in line behind behind him. In my tiny, shaking voice, I let him know if he does not remove himself from the front desk and allow me to help other guests, I will have no choice but to call the police. He's now yelling at me. He's going to call corporate. This is unacceptable. How dare I do this? And so on and so on. He wants a comment card now. My hands are shaking, and when I put the card on the desk, it slips over the other side and onto the floor in front of him. He then demands that I walk around the desk and pick it up for him. And that was all I could really handle. In full-on tears at this point, I stick up my middle finger, I flip him the bird, and I say to him, screw you, screw this job, I quit. And after that, I walked out the front door, leaving a lobby full of guests still waiting to be helped. From my car, I called my manager, still crying, letting her know I cursed out a guest in front of other guests, and I walked out with no one to cover the shift. She said, I'm on my way, don't leave. The police showed up at the same time as her. She called them herself. She actually told me I was not allowed to quit, but instead told me that I had the rest of the day off. For several weeks, the couple called the hotel every few days to complain again about their experience, lying about details and omitting everything about the man's aggressive behavior, saying things like, we can't stop thinking about how we were treated. We've been praying over this nonstop. So honestly, I'm so glad I don't work at this place anymore, because these types of experiences really make me not want to work in this business ever again. What a crazy situation to be stuck in. And that man was completely out of line. Absolutely unacceptable behavior, and seriously, he should have had the cops called on him. Like, does he not realize he's screaming at a child right now? Like, literally an 18-year-old teenager. Like, what is wrong with people? If that was me and I was in that situation, after the second time of him screaming at full voice, I would have told him he can either get out of my face or he can get in this cop car that's on its way. Like, there's no way I'm gonna put up with that for a second. But I totally understand someone being 18 years old and being screamed at by a fully grown adult. Like, what is wrong with people? So hopefully you found better jobs in the future. And also, what is with the manager saying you can't quit? You absolutely can quit. I would have quit right then and there and been like, oh, I can't quit? Try and stop me. Like, they absolutely can't force you to stay at that job. Like, that's ridiculous. So hopefully wherever you work now, it's a lot better than what you dealt with here, because that situation seriously was crazy, and no one ever deserves to get treated like that in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. An entitled man refuses to follow the rules, and as a result, he cost his company over $10,000, and it was honestly all completely his own fault. Here's what happened. So for a bit of context, I'm a 27-year-old female, and I work for a small local security company. We mainly do oil, gas, and logging roads. I typically work pipeline security, but I'm between sites at the moment waiting for spring breakup, and this is when the ground starts to thaw and heavy equipment and trucks can't operate because this is a swampland. Before breakup, they've got a 24/7 log haul happening on one of the biggest logging roads in our area. Now, because of this, traffic going against the log trucks is being restricted by us. I sit down at the far end of the log road and control who can go through the wrong way. Now, this is limited to 3 companies, as well as their subcontractors, because their sites are close to my end of the road, and they don't interfere with the log trucks. Any company that is in violation of this rule receives a $10,000 fine, and their road use privileges are affected. In this case, they can still only travel one way on the road once breakup hits, and the log haul has stopped, all the way up until the log company says otherwise. Now, one company in particular has always been one massive pain the entire time. For privacy reasons, we'll call them Stupid Incorporated. Now, Stupid Incorporated's site sits about halfway down the log road. They have to go down to the far end of the road and drive the same direction as the log trucks. Well, they don't bother telling their subcontractors this. So all day, every day, I'm busy turning these guys around. One morning last week, this big pickup truck pulls up, and I ask the usual, where are you headed? He then gave me the kilometer number of where the site is. And you guessed it, it's Stupid Incorporated. Only this guy gives me a different company name, which is one of the subcontractors. Knowing exactly what he was trying to do, I informed the guy that he couldn't go this way, and that is when he lost it. He starts cursing and swearing, yelling about how it's complete BS, and I shouldn't be allowed to do this. He tells me he's gone this way down the road plenty of times when he's not working, and it's never been an issue. The thing is that private users, so just regular people, are technically allowed to do whatever they want. Legally speaking, we can't stop them, as roads are public to a degree. There's a whole thing that I'm not going to get into, but private users are allowed to use the road, though we strongly caution against it. So he then says, alright then, I'm a private user, and you can't stop me. But I respond by saying, you just told me that you're here for work. But alright, if you say so, you've been warned. He then floors it down the road. What followed was a 4-day manhunt. I immediately notified the road patrol supervisor, as well as road patrol and my boss. I was asked questions for 4 days while they tried to identify this guy. Because he said he was going to work for Stupid Incorporated, they were the ones that got hit with a fine. And of course, it didn't go well over for them either. The next thing I know, the site superintendent is asking me tons of questions about the guy. When I said he worked for the subcontractor, well, that didn't go well either. From my understanding, the subcontractor that this guy was quoting was at risk of losing the contract that they had with Stupid Incorporated all over this. The subcontractor then started digging around, and I heard they found out exactly who it was. And you guessed it, this guy lost his job over it. And you want to know what the kicker is? He wasn't even working for Stupid Incorporated that day. The superintendent told me they didn't even have this subcontractor out working on anything. One of his employees had seen the truck I described way on the other side of Stupid Incorporated's site. He hadn't even stopped there. As far as anyone knows, he actually was there as a private user. And had he just said as much, none of this would have happened in the first place. Talk about digging your own grave. This guy is actually just a complete idiot. He either seriously miscalculated how he could get his job done, or he put his foot in his mouth, trying to act like some kind of big shot, as if he could go through this territory without any kind of problem. So honestly, in my opinion, this guy definitely deserved to get fired, because the way he reacted to being told, no, you gotta turn around, was completely inappropriate. Not even mentioning the fact that he cost this company over $10,000 simply because he was being an idiot. My boyfriend has been getting upset about me with the way I use my finances, and despite explaining everything to him, as well as showing him blatantly that I don't spend needlessly, he still thinks I'm very irresponsible with my money. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So this happened 2 days ago, and my boyfriend and I have been arguing ever since. So I work in homeless services, and lately one of my clients has been carrying his belongings in a garbage bag. I had this really nice North Face bag that I got a few years ago, but didn't really use it in the slightest. I wanted to give this backpack to my client so he could comfortably carry his things in. I was sharing this with my boyfriend, and he was more concerned that I just gave away a really nice and expensive backpack when I could have sold it instead. I explained to him that I got it years ago and didn't end up liking it after using it for a while, and I also got it with a gift card, so it's not like I actually used my money on it. He thinks I just throw money away by giving away things I don't want anymore. For example, these are just a few that he's given me. When he lost his AirPods, I gave him my old pair. Or these shirts that I thrifted 10 years ago, I gave them to him as well because they were more his style than mine anyways. He just thinks I just throw money away. I also really like nice things like jewelry, purses, and nice clothes. I don't really spend a lot of money all the time, but sometimes I like to spoil myself every now and then with the money I earned for all the hard work I do at my job. His biggest concern is that we should pay off our student loans first, and then when they are paid off, we can spend money on whatever we want. And while that sounds pretty nice, I'm probably going to be paying off my loans for the next 30 to 40 years, maybe 50, or until I'm off the earth. Regardless, I don't want to stress myself out and literally just be working to pay them off. I'm on top of my loans and my bills every month, and I still have money left over. I don't always spend it, but again, if I see something I like and it's not going to put me in a financial bind, I might just get it. He would rather spend money on expenses rather than the materialistic things, and he thinks I'm being materialistic when I don't believe I am in the slightest. This whole argument has made me feel like I did the wrong thing, and I'm questioning if I'm in the wrong about everything, and I honestly don't know what to do. It really is unfortunate the way your boyfriend is acting, because I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to pay things off as well as spending money on yourself. Like, there's literally nothing wrong with that in my opinion. I think you've made it clear that you really do pay off your loans, and you're on top of everything that comes your way. It's not like you're slacking in any kind of department, or you're choosing to buy things instead of paying for your loans or your bills. Like, you sound like a responsible adult. And you're right, you're probably going to be paying off those loans for a long time. So with his logic, you literally will never be able to buy yourself anything anytime soon. So I think maybe re-explaining to him that, hey, this is first off my money, but also I'm on top of my loans. There's no reason why I can't just buy something for myself if I want it. From what you've described, it really doesn't sound like you're doing anything that would put you in financial danger. So the fact that your boyfriend is acting this way is really annoying. In my opinion, I really think you should be responsible for your own money, and the same goes for him. I mean, you're not going to him and saying, hey, this is how you need to spend your money, so why on earth would he go to you and try and lecture you about what you should and shouldn't buy. So hopefully there's some kind of middle ground here, because the way your boyfriend's acting is really inappropriate in my opinion, and I really do think he needs to reevaluate his position. My entitled boss refuses to listen to me when I try to explain them how to properly clean a new piece of equipment we got at our store, and as a result of being forced to do it her way, we effectively ruined a machine that we only got just a few weeks prior, and it really is entirely her fault. Here's what happened. So I used to work at a deli shop / cafe place just to make ends meet while I went to university, and the owner of that place was a real piece of work. If you got on her bad side, you were on her list, and she would be both openly and passively aggressive with a general vibe that you were a complete idiot no matter what you did. I heard that woman scream at a 15-year-old on her second day because she had mixed up coffee and teacups, which differed in size by about an ounce, and that is just a taste of her personality. After this whole experience, my dad told me that as a general hint, it may be good to be suspicious of a workplace that hires exclusively teen girls with no experience, because they're very unlikely to recognize horrible workplace treatment. There were 2 people in this place who didn't take her garbage at all. Me, a mid-20s recovering addict who has seen way worse than what this lady could dish out, and a 45-year-old Iranian man who told her that she could get lost, especially when she berated him for not being willing to come in early to his 11-hour shift to prep for ingredients. And of course, this would have been off the clock, so I honestly really liked that guy. So with the stage set, this is when my malicious compliance came in. When I started, this place desperately needed a new wheel meat slicer. The one they had made a constant screeching noise and drove everybody crazy. About a month and a half into my employment, they got one. Industrial grade, cost like $5,000, but looked and worked accordingly. Amazing piece of kit. As we were all celebrating and unpacking it, I flipped through the instructions booklet to look up how it works and specifically how to clean it, as there were quite a few parts. The manual says to clean everything detachable thoroughly, but that the wheel itself should be cleaned by letting it run on a very slow speed and using a cloth and alcohol-based cleaning agent on the exposed part. There were some pictures and detailed instructions on how to do this specifically, and it explicitly stated not to take the whole wheel off and deep clean it, as this would remove the wheel lubrication as well as the anti-corrosive agent and risk damaging the machine altogether. And it was also especially clear to not let water or any cleaning agent get into the machine without making sure to thoroughly replace any lubricant. Anyways, I was working the evening shift, so 99% of the time, it was up to me to clean it. The instructions is how I clean the machine, because I trust the designer to know how to clean it. Or I do for about 2 days until my boss sees me, asks me what I'm doing, and why I'm not taking the wheel off to clean it. She berates me about food safety and hygiene standards, telling me how disgusting I am for doing it this way. I stand my ground and I inform her I do it this way because of the instructions, and that I'm just following the manual, and explain the reason behind it. If we scrub it down, especially the inner part, the grease will go away a lot faster and will risk damage to the machine. She basically tells me to shove it and to do it her way. Now, I'm not gonna ruin a $5,000 thing all because one woman doesn't understand how lubrication works. But the very next day, my manager sees me clean the machine and gives me an extremely condescending talk down on how this isn't how we approach hygiene. She also said, "The boss told me you don't understand food safety." My explanation falls on deaf ears again, and I'm also informed not only am I expected to take the wheel off and scrub it at the end of the day, but also after every use. My boss also wants me to make sure I spray the inside section to ensure that there's no bacteria in there, with some hints that there had apparently been a whole colony of life growing in there due to my 2-day negligence. She wants me to spray soap and water mixture into the cogs of the machine they just bought. The blade is stainless steel, but the cogs are not. But you know what? I said fine. If that's what you want me to do, that's what I will do. Every day, 5 times a day, I take that machine apart and I scrub it down. Every day, I see that lubrication disappear more and more. And after a week, it's all gone, eventually becoming replaced by growing patches of rust. Now, I feel bad for the machine, but I do as I've been told. I only work 6 days a week, so every day I come in after my break, thinking that surely yesterday my manager would have reacted. But nope, she takes it apart just like I do, clean it in the same manner as I do, and doesn't seem to think twice about the fact that this brand new machine is rusting apart in front of our eyes. In fact, she goes the extra mile and also scrubs the cogs itself, which is probably why a year or so worth of lubricant disappeared in 1 week. Now, the thing about rusty machinery is that it usually works up until a certain point, but once it reaches that point, point, there's no going back. One day I turned it on, and it makes a screeching noise I can only imagine came from the soul of this bit of kit wondering why God had forsaken it. And it's like the clocks all stopped. My coworker in the pastry section comes over to ask what in the world that noise was. My boss and manager come into the room with the same question, but I just shrug and I slice my salami. The boss tells the co-owner to go get some lubrication for the gears, and after a minute, he puts some spray-on oil lube in front of me and tells me to lube the gears up. I ask him where the lithium lubricant paste is, since according to the instructions, that's what you need. And he seems flabbergasted that putting something made for hinges and ball bearings isn't appropriate for a meat slicer. 2 days and some tinnitus later, he's acquired some grease, and then proceeds to be stumped when I let him know I'm not gonna stop doing my regular job to spend 30 minutes greasing up this machine unless someone else takes over my station or they pay me overtime. My boss is meanwhile demanding to know why I haven't told them that we need to stock up on lithium grease, which I don't even bother to respond to. I make sandwiches, I'm not your mechanic. I left that job a few weeks later, and when I did, the machine was still crying the song of its ancestors every time we turned it on, and we were still scrubbing it down from the inside out daily. I have since then gotten a sneaking suspicion that I know what happened to its predecessor, and me and my dad, who is actually a mechanic, still laugh about it sometimes. My boss did ask, rhetorically speaking, at one point how in the world the machine got to that stage so fast, but I answered that it's probably because we've been scrubbing the lubrication and the corrosive protection off several times a day, and I take great pleasure in the memory that she completely ignored me. It is the only time while I was there that she didn't snap back at me, and I like to think she remembered back to when I explicitly told her that if we clean this thing in that way, this is exactly what would happen. Overall, I don't think a $5,000 machine would make or break anything, but boy did that feel good. That boss is an absolute moron. Talk about not knowing what you're doing. This lady literally destroyed that machine. She had her worker taking it apart and basically slowly but surely destroying it one piece at a time. I mean, how stupid do you have to be? And this really did fall on deaf ears. I mean, the original poster tried to say, hey, we're ruining the machine by doing it this way, but this entitled boss was not hearing it. They just thought to themselves, no, I have to be right. It is my way or the highway. And that clearly is not the answer to this stupid decision. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to look at the manual and properly know how to clean that thing. And instead of listening to their coworker, they decided to act like they know best. And in effect, in just a few weeks, ruined a $5,000 machine. And I think the original poster is right. This is absolutely what happened to the previous meat slicer. I personally can't stand managers who act like this, who don't listen to the people underneath them and pretend like they know best. Because honestly, situations like this happen. And then guess what? They're gonna try and turn it on you and pretend like it's your fault. Thankfully though, it looks like the original poster was able to get out of there in one piece. And with all things considered, I don't blame them for quitting, because that boss sounded obnoxious, and you absolutely do not deserve to be treated like that in the slightest. My entitled teacher accuses me of plagiarizing my project, and as a result, she forces me to provide evidence that I didn't cheat, forcing me to go to extreme measures just to prove my innocence. Here's what happened. So I had a pretty lousy teacher for 8th grade social studies. To give you an idea of this, there was a unit where she asked the class if anyone seriously thought that they would want to be the president someday, and would explain that something like that needs to be your calling. Someone asked her if teaching was her calling, and after pausing, she answered honestly and said no. Now onto the story at question. One of the bigger projects that we had was called News Summary or something like that. The point was simple: to encourage us to be aware of current events. We were required to read, watch, or listen to the news and write 3-sentence summaries. No citations or sources needed. She just wanted to see that we were informed about things in the news. This was a piece of cake. I wrote my summaries, turned them in, and thought nothing more of it. I still thought nothing of it a couple of days later when she spent the entire class ranting about ethics and plagiarism. You know how you feel when someone calls a meeting to admonish the entire group for something that someone did wrong? That why am I stuck listening to this garbage feeling? That was me. At one point, she asked everyone to close their eyes and said to us, raise your hand if you'd like another shot at the project. So now imagine my shock when at the end of class, she asked me to stay behind. She says to me, you've always been one of my better students. I am really surprised that you didn't speak up in class today. I looked at her and I said, speak up about what? She said, when I asked for hands. So at this point, I'm really confused and I don't know what to say. So after a long pause, she lays it out for me. She apparently knows that all my summaries were plagiarized plagiarized. Because according to her, no 8th grader writes like they're writing for a newspaper. But she can't prove it because she doesn't know if I just listened to the newscast and wrote down what they said or not. And this was also back before everything was online, mind you. I didn't know how to respond, and I had to get to my next class. So I left quite confused and unsure what this accusation would mean. Well, when I got home from school that day, my mom was quick to tell me that she had had an interesting phone call with my teacher. And here's the good news. Not only was my mom always supportive of me as a child, she literally watched me doing this project, and she still had all the source material, newspapers that were a few weeks old, so they weren't in the pile of things that the teacher would have easily found at work. She probably could have found the papers at the library, but again, this is someone who admitted to the class at one point that teaching wasn't really her calling. The plan my mom had worked out with the teacher during this phone call was that if I could produce proof that I wasn't plagiarizing, we would forget this entire thing ever happened. My mom was so livid during this phone call that she also didn't really think to say that we have the papers at home and we'll bring them in tomorrow. The teacher said I had till the end of the week to provide proof, which is good because the scheme that finally started hatching in my head couldn't be put in place overnight. See, the thing about our local paper is that the letters to the editor page would print nearly anything, as long as it wasn't an absolute crazy rant from someone who sounded like they belonged in an institution. So after racking my brain, I wrote a letter that complied with the length limit, which I think was about 150 characters. The basic summary of it was that I was noticing more and more that I had a number of friends who were showing real aptitude for different things at school as they entered their teenage years, be it the arts like music and writing or athletics or philosophy, but teachers kept downplaying their aptitudes as well as their interests in order to push the notion that the only thing that mattered was being able to pass your middle school exams. It was, as I wrote, discouraging to see my friends' talents and interests being so casually dismissed. Admittedly, I took some liberties here and there, as most of my friends were actually just doing what they needed to pass with good grades. But I had a point to make. 3 days later, I handed in my stack of source material after class. Attached last in the pile was my letter with my name, age, and town printed beneath it, published in the newspaper. In hindsight, I wish I would have included a post-it note just to speak more directly to my point. But there was no mistaking the message from that note. It's not hard for an 8th grader to write like they're writing for the newspaper. I stayed to make sure she read all of the clippings, and after an awkward pause, I was told I could go to my next class. She then quietly replaced my grade of a 0 with an A. The rest of the school year was perfectly boring, and she continued to teach all the way up until she could afford to retire. I did hear later on, however, that she stopped doing the new summary project, and I would like to think that I played a little bit of a role in her canceling that stupid project. Good for the original poster for standing their ground. There is literally nothing more terrifying in my mind than being a student of some degree and getting accused of plagiarism. Like, that is a serious offense, and that is seriously scary. So good for you and your mom for basically backing up your story and showing that yes, I did have my sources available, and I also did not plagiarize this. It is easy to get in the newspaper, and you proved it to her all in one go. And that clearly was more than enough evidence to shut her up for good, as well as to eventually cancel that project altogether. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius? Check it out, linked down below in the description. My boyfriend ruins the mood all the time by accusing me of acting weird over and over again, when in reality, he's the one with some mental health issues that he refuses to get help for. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So my boyfriend and I have been together for 7.5 years, and we've been living together for 3. Lately, we have been going through an extremely rough patch. There have been many exhausting nights of conversations that just go in circles. There have been some hurtful things said on both sides. Moral of the story is his mental health just isn't right. He is working in a prison as a psych assistant, and I know that's part of what has been taking a toll on him. I have been there for him in every way that I can. I will make sure he comes home to a clean apartment because I know messes just stress him out even more. I will write him encouraging notes, reminding him what I love about him, as well as telling him to have a great day, and the list goes on. I always listen to him for hours, even if I'm not particularly interested in what it is that he's talking about. I am even literally going to heavy metal concerts with him because he wanted me to come along, even though I don't like that kind of music, but I just wanted to spend time with him. I gave him all the space he wanted because that's what he said that he needed. I did not push him, and I let him come to me. I put my feelings on the back burner because he wanted to take a break to figure himself out. He went back and forth on the break thing for like 5 or 6 weeks. 1 week saying, yes, let's do it, spend 1 or 2 nights away, then come right back, and a few days later, announced we really need to go back on a break for real. It was a nightmare, and it was such a confusing time for me. But I did it because I know his mental health hasn't been the best, and I was hoping his space away would help him and then help us. The worst part is he refuses to go to therapy. It's kind of ironic given he is in the mental health field and plans to pursue his PhD. It's frustrating because I had terrible mental health issues all my life, and when I started going to a good therapist and working on myself, I started feeling better. And just as I started feeling better is when he started feeling bad, which has hindered my progress in a way. I am proud of myself because I have really learned to cope and I feel stronger, but it just sucks because my relationship is one aspect that I'm just not happy with, and he really isn't doing anything to help himself either, so I feel helpless. He comes home with an attitude pretty much every night. I am always so eager to see him, and then boom, he is in a terrible mood. It's just getting tiring, and I feel guilty saying this because I too went through an awful mental health phase. The difference is I didn't want to shut him out. I wanted to be around him. Fast forward, and the past couple of weeks have been okay. I don't know if I would describe it as being better because there are moments where things do feel better, but then we get into a fight again, and it's really discouraging. It just feels like something is missing emotionally, and I can't put my finger on it. I'm just so confused right now. It's like there's an emotional need I have, but I don't know what it is. He isn't as caring anymore, which I understand because he is going through something and needs to focus on bettering himself. I guess I want him to be nicer and sweeter to me, as well as want to be around me and be more concerned with me. He seems short. There's not much effort into him making me feel really loved. For a while, I did have to really ask over and over again for him to spend time with me, but it honestly started to feel forced. So I just gave up, and I literally just let him have all the space that he wanted. Last night, he did suggest that we should go and eat and then go play pool, which I was excited about. We get to dinner and I'm in a good mood, talking about random things, no indication that there's anything wrong. Then he says to me, I'm feeling down, all of a sudden out of nowhere, almost randomly. So I'm like, okay, what's wrong? And he didn't want to talk about it or elaborate. So of course that kind of put a damper on the mood in general, but I continued in a decent mood because we have a habit of making small things that ruin our entire night together. Well, then he kept randomly saying, you're acting weird. And I'm honestly telling you right now that I really was not acting weird. I kept going on with my energy and said, no, I'm not. I'm just sitting here talking. But then he said it a few more times and would ask what's wrong. I don't know why, but nothing annoys me more than getting accused over and over again of acting weird when I am literally not. It drives me crazy. I always tell him when there's an issue with me. So I started getting irritated and I told him that he was projecting. He was the one who said he was down out of nowhere in the middle of a random conversation and then started accusing me of acting weird. We were literally just talking about our workouts that we did and talking about workout in general when he said that all of a sudden out of nowhere. I had an upbeat energy. He got a little bit into an argument after that. What makes me upset is that he acts so surprised when I finally get irritated and have an attitude back. I can't defend myself or have any feelings because then I'm seen as aggressive and I'm the one who's going to be at fault all of the sudden. I may have overreacted because I got triggered on the third time he accused me of acting weird. It wasn't terrible, I just got frustrated and basically said he was projecting. We did recover and had a good time surprisingly. I say that because the last few times that we've gone out to eat, the night ended terribly with us fighting or in bad moods overall, but I just have a terrible taste in my mouth this morning and I feel guilty because we did actually have a good time. So it really makes me feel like I don't know what I'm doing. There's so much wrong and I feel like my needs are not being met and I'm so tired of having a terrible time almost every time that we hang out. I'm not perfect in any way, shape, or form. I have my issues too, but I don't even know how to talk to him at this point because it's all just so confusing. And many times that I do express a need, the response is always, well, I do this and I do that. And I'm not discrediting that. I just don't feel heard in the slightest. I feel like I'm starting to have a lot of resentment building up. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Honestly, it sounds like your boyfriend is an emotional vampire. And that's someone who is just constantly draining to be around. They completely destroy the mood by saying stuff like, oh, I'm just feeling down all of a sudden. Or obviously trying to instigate arguments when you're both clearly just trying to have a good time. And by the way, that's what he did when you guys went out to eat. He was clearly trying to pick a fight because either he's bored or he's just being so toxic that he just doesn't even see what he's doing. And while you can't force him to go get help and find some kind of solutions to his problems, you can make it very clear that the way he's acting is completely inappropriate. Because based on what you've described, it really sounds sounds like you're unhappy, and I honestly think you deserve to be happy in your relationship, regardless of what your partner may or may not be going through. My boyfriend feels that I'm stringing him along, all because I want to go traveling overseas while I'm young, and now we're at a crossroads in our relationship, and I seriously don't know what to do. So my boyfriend and I have been together for a year, and everything has been going well, until I brought up the idea of going traveling for 4 to 6 months. I'm a person that loves to travel and explore, and he knew that when we got together, but it has never been a problem until now. I brought it up in conversation after some close work colleagues moved to Australia for a few months, and I just said how I would love to do that too. At first, it was just a crazy idea, but the more I thought about it, the more it became a realistic idea. I asked him if he would like to go traveling with me, and he said no. I asked him if he wanted to try long distance while I was traveling around, and he also said no. I then asked him if he would like to come out and visit me while I was traveling, and he also said no. I said to him that he was leaving me no other option than for us to go on a break while I'm away and revisit the relationship when I'm back. The other option is for us to split up altogether, or for me to not go traveling at all. I had talked to my close friends about the idea of going traveling, and 2 of them are 100% in, but I would have to wait until they finish university in 3 years' time. We got into a big fight about it, where he told me he feels like I'm stringing him along until I go traveling, and that we will break up. I feel like I've given him every option available so that we can still stay together and I can still travel, but he's not happy with any suggestion that I've made. A couple of weeks later, he tells me that he wants an open relationship so that he can see other girls to get over me quicker when I inevitably break up with him to go traveling. I hesitantly agreed after he pinky promised me that it wasn't a test and that this is what he really wanted. In fact, he set up dating profiles for both of us. Within 2 days, I had 23 matches and was talking to a few guys, and he had none. He saw me texting one of the guys and accused me of cheating, and that in reality, it all really was a test, just to see if I really loved him. I brought up that he promised that it wasn't a test, and the only reason I agreed to it was to make him happy, just to try and save us in the long run. All of this has happened because I want to go traveling and live my life to the fullest. I love this man and truly believe I could marry him one day, so I don't want to ruin our relationship. However, it is important to me that I can have freedom to go traveling while I'm young, so I don't have any regrets later in life. What should I do? I think I've noticed a theme in some of these posts. The person in question says all of these awful, terrible things that their significant other has done, and then in the last paragraph, they try to convince themselves that maybe it's not that bad. Well, you know what? It is that bad. So I can confidently say that your boyfriend has a bunch of red flags. For starters, in my opinion, anytime someone says, oh, let's have an open relationship, that, in my opinion, is a massive red flag. That not only shows me that he doesn't want to be with you specifically, but it also shows that if given the chance, he really would kick you to the curb and go with another woman in an instant. And then he goes ahead and makes up dating profiles for the both of you, almost immediately at that, by the way. That's really sketchy in my opinion. So it really makes me think, was he doing this before and now he's asking for an open relationship so he can continue to do stuff like this? Because that's honestly what popped into my head. And also the fact that he's trying to double back and be like, psych, this really was a test and you failed, is, in my opinion, proof enough that this guy is not emotionally mature and he is not ready for a girlfriend. So you know what? In my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would be making plans to absolutely go traveling. If he doesn't like it, and if this really is the end of your relationship, then in my opinion, it's for the best. This guy does not sound like a good boyfriend in the slightest, no matter what you try to say in that last paragraph. And hopefully you can see that sooner than later. My entitled superior in the Air Force forces me as well as my crew members to dismantle and go on a wild goose chase looking for a pair of pliers that he hid on his own. But thankfully, I get my revenge and I put him in his place in a beautiful manner. Here's what happened. So I was an inspection specialist serving in the United States Air Force, and this was way back in the early 80s. I had been assigned a sweet 30-day temporary duty to England. I had a large box of equipment that I brought over in order to support the daily maintenance of our aircraft. The way it worked out is that I would work out of the local test lab at the base that we were stationed at. I come into the lab and I'm met by some real cool airmen that help me get my box moved in and briefly give me the rundown on who's cool and who isn't. And the shop chief is not on the cool list, and it becomes very apparent when he finally shows up to see who the visiting airman is. The chief is one of those people that think they're above you for whatever reason. Bottom line is that he was despised by his crew. I needed to borrow a pair of pliers in order to loosen up some bolts that was holding the equipment box lid on, so I got a pair from their spare toolbox and got to work unpacking. It was a Friday, and I was eager to get done with it so I could sample the English culture firsthand. In my haste to get out the door, I failed to return the pliers to the toolkit, which is a huge no-no when you're in the Air Force and have access to a working flight line. All tools have to be accounted for at the end of each shift. This is to prevent a lost tool from either being left inside an airplane or left on the ground, just waiting to be sucked up into the intake of the jet engine. And I get this, and I'm totally good with the rules. Anyways, I had to come into the lab on Saturday, and I was told that the pliers were left out and are missing. Normal protocol demands that I report the missing tool to the dispatch office, and they would shut down the flight line until either the tool was found elsewhere or it was verified that it wasn't on the flight line. I decided to forego that part because I knew that the pliers never left the room we were in, and we were located well over a quarter of a mile from the flight line. Myself, as well as the guys assigned weekend duty, spent several hours scouring that entire lab for those pliers. We moved everything out of a couple of rooms, checked in every box and container, and even looked in all the desks, except for one, and that was the shop chief's desk, and it was locked. I made the comment that we should x-ray his desk just to make sure, and as a side note, we had the capacity to perform mobile x-ray inspections. We came back that Sunday and looked through everything again and still didn't find them. Monday comes around, and the shop chief asked us if we had any luck finding the pliers. We told him no and explained everything that we did. He told us to try one more time, so off we go to repeat the process for the third time. However, as I was moving stuff in the room where I originally thought I lost the pliers, I spot them on the floor behind the wheel of a cart that I had moved out of that room 2 times before. I quietly let the crew know that I found them and told them that the shop chief must have been holding them. So I picked them up and I put them in my pocket, and I told the crew not to say a word. And it's right about now that my malicious compliance comes into play. We went ahead and cleared everything out of the room, as in totally empty. I called the shop chief over and I told him that the room was cleared and we didn't find the pliers. He walks over to the door of the room and I'm tracking where his eyes go, and he looks in the exact spot where he put the pliers and literally jumps up a bit like he was startled. And it was right about then that I really started to lay it on thick. I tell him that the only place we haven't looked was in his locked desk, and how I was tempted to x-ray it, but now we have to call dispatch since the pliers have been missing for over 2 days, that the flight line must be shut down, and so on and so on. And the entire time I'm acting like I'm about to panic because we could damage an airplane and compromise the mission. I just let it rip, and the entire time I watched his face get redder and redder until he finally fesses up and admits to hiding the pliers. I then laid into him a lecture about playing games and how he started this game and now he wants to whine when I played the same game with him. Now keep in mind that this jerk outranked me, but he realized that I had him by the neck, because if he went after me for some kind of insubordination, then he would have to explain a tool going missing for over 2 days, all without reporting it. So in the end, I was the hero of the crew, and the shop chief left me alone for 27 more days that I was there. But it truly was awesome to see karma come his way and put him in his place in a beautiful manner. The shop chief is so toxic. They literally wasted everybody's time that weekend and made them move every single item out of that shop just to find those stupid pliers that he was holding on to. Like, think about it. This is a shop that the Air Force uses. So that means they basically wasted their time going through every single object in that room to try and find these stupid pliers. And yeah, it's kind of on the original poster for not having it off to the side and in its proper place before they left. But at the same time, this shop chief literally went out of their way to waste everyone's time just to play some stupid game. That's not fair for anybody in the slightest. And when it comes to the original poster, yeah, this guy was outranking you. You played a serious gambit and basically being like, oh, you're gonna try and tell on me? Well, I'm gonna do the exact same thing to you and explain to the higher ups why you were hiding a tool for 2 days. Like, that's honestly super childish, and there's no reason to do that to your crew. So good for the original poster for standing up for themselves, because from the sounds of it, this shop chief absolutely had it coming. An entitled HOA tries to punish me and my family for putting cameras up on our home, telling us to stop them if we can, pushing us into a legal dispute that cost them thousands of dollars in the process. Here's what happened. So this happened several years ago and is a multi-year long story. So to start things out, we installed cameras in front of our home that were looking at our vehicles, and part of the camera angles did overlook parts of 2 neighbors' properties, one's backyard and one's side yard. The cameras were battery operated and had a function where you could gray out areas that you didn't want to film. When motion occurred in the grayed out areas, the cameras would not not be activated to film. The neighbor's entire properties and several bushes on our property were grayed out, and we did this when installing them. One of the neighbors was a friend and had no issues with this whatsoever. We even showed her the camera angle, and she said she didn't care whether it was grayed out or not. But even with that in mind, we still left it grayed out. The other neighbor's name was Karen. Not really, but we all know why I chose that name. This entitled Karen was on the HOA board, and as you can imagine, we did not get along with this Karen or the HOA board in the slightest. We told the Karen about the camera and showed her the grayed out area at the same time that we told our friendly neighbor about it. It was simply an FYI conversation, and we were not asking for permission in the slightest. This entitled Karen told us to take the cameras down immediately, or else we would regret it. About a week after we hung up the cameras, we got a notice from our HOA that we were violating the bylaws. Now, what were the bylaws in question? It had to do with being a nuisance to your neighbor. There wasn't a specific bylaw preventing placement of cameras, so this is literally all they could find to try and punish us. We responded with a letter detailing how we were not violating any bylaws or laws in general, and we asked them to cease and desist. But I think we know where this is going to go, because they did not cease and they did not desist. And what was their first response? They said to me that the HOA has the right to enforce these bylaws. Just try and stop us if you think you can. And these types of responses were, unfortunately, quite common from this board. We eventually entered this battle with one goal in mind: to cost them as much money and time as possible. The HOA hired a lawyer specifically just to fight us. To my knowledge, this has not happened to any other resident. In the following 4 months, we ended up costing the HOA over $4,000 in lawyers' fees fighting this battle. For reference, the entire HOA income was maybe $25,000 a year. When it came time for our official HOA hearing over the matter, we had successfully postponed it, thanks to our attorney friend, 3 separate times. There were over 100 back and forth emails with the HOA attorney, as well as ourselves. Each one of those emails was a 15-minute expense for the HOA, so I was more than happy to follow up a follow-up question with another follow-up question if it meant the HOA attorney was going to keep billing them for their time. We didn't actually want to take this battle to court, so we ended up removing the cameras the day of the hearing, just to prevent being fined, even if the fine wouldn't hold up in court. The HOA decided in the hearing that we were guilty of violating the bylaw, but they couldn't fine us, as the bylaws don't allow a fine until a hearing has been held, and the cameras were already removed. In the end, the punishment was a sternly written piece of paper on the attorney's letterhead, delivered via certified mail, that stated that we were not allowed to place a camera on our home that had the potential to invade a neighbor's privacy. Keep in mind, though, that the letter specifically stated that the camera could not be placed on our home, so we left the camera off of our home for about 4 months, all the way up until the annual HOA meeting. And you should have seen the look on the HOA board's face when I asked them to explain the $4,000 line item for attorney's fee that simply stated title searches attorney fees. The board actually tried to hide the fact that they had spent $4,000 trying to fight us over a couple of cameras by putting the fees in as a title search. Needless to say, the meeting did not go well for them. About half of them lost their positions on the board, while the other half did remain on the board. About a week after the annual meeting, we installed new cameras, facing the same direction as the prior ones, only this time, we installed a post in the ground and mounted the cameras on the post. The admonishment we received after the hearing specifically stated that we were not allowed to install cameras on our home, and said nothing about putting them on a post. They did send a letter to try and tell us to remove the cameras, but a sternly worded response indicating that we were prepared to fight them on this actually ended up working this time. I guess they didn't want to spend another $4,000 trying to fight us on this. And you know what? We didn't receive any follow-up responses after that. And even after 2 years and running strong, every single camera is still installed on their post, and we don't have any plans of taking them down anytime soon. I gotta be honest, as someone who deals with HOAs on occasion, it is fantastic to see someone else put these people in their place. I seriously can't stand HOAs in the slightest. I think they are a massive waste of time, and they are just a vampire for everybody else's money. So good for the original poster for literally wasting so much time for these people. And honestly, what a hilarious workaround. Putting that on a post that's not specifically on your house is such a funny workaround that I'm sure they were not expecting. But if anything, that'll hopefully teach them a lesson that they can't just try to bully somebody away and act like they can get away with anything, because eventually you're going to run into someone who's willing to fight back, and the end result is going to be the same. You're going going to be horribly embarrassed, and half your board is going to lose their positions. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. An entitled guest freaks out on me, forcing me to run into the back office just to hide from her and call the police for some kind of safety, and I've never been more scared in my life. Here's what happened. So at 1:05 a.m., I was minding my own business, sitting at the front desk like I always do. A blonde 40-something woman comes down, tugging a coat over her arms. I greet her with a smile and I say good morning. The woman looks at me and rolls her eyes, asking me what time it was. I tell her the time and she just grumbles, "I got here at 8 p.m. and I'm waking up at 1 in the morning. Ask me again if I'm having a good morning." So it was pretty obvious we had a tired, grumpy guest. Well, it is early and I am on a night schedule, so it's no biggie. It doesn't bother me. I just laugh it off and mention how tired she must be, hoping to just smooth over her attitude with some positivity. But we only went downhill. She mentioned something about the hotel making a lot of money off of being greedy. I was a little shocked by this, since that wasn't the usual dialogue my NPC brain had to use. So I started to say, "We usually have a slow season when it comes to wintertime." She then interjects and says, "Are you the owner?" I blinked a few times and said, "No, I'm just the night audit." She then responded by saying, "Then don't say we. You are not we. You don't own the building." She banged on the fireplace a few times before tightening her coat around her. I thought for a few seconds about how odd this interaction was. If anything, this was just a weird encounter. But since she came from the elevator, she had to be a guest. The side doors were locked, and she mentioned paying for the room. So this had to be someone staying here intentionally. She was already being extremely hostile, and since I work alone, I needed some information off of her. I asked her what her room number is, hovering my fingers over the keyboard. If anything, this sounded like a complaint in the making, and after one of my previous experiences, I wanted to give my boss a heads up about a future issue so he could address it as soon as possible. I mean, he did tell us that our location gets fined $150 per complaint, so I wanted to help mitigate the issue. But the woman told me she didn't know her room number, so I raised my brow and I said, "Can I get your last name then?" This lady interrupted me mid-sentence and said, "I don't want to give you that." She looked me in the eyes when she said that, and right about then I knew this was about to be trouble. I responded to her by saying, "Then you need to leave." I basically gave her the option to either return to her room or go outside. I really did not know how to continue. I was sure that she was a guest, so I wouldn't have said anything if she had just gone back to the elevator. But in the lobby, fighting me was one place she wouldn't be. If she went outside, I'd ask for her name again to verify her identity. But I will say that I was getting worried about the confrontation. At this point, she pulled a key out of her pocket. She said to me, "You don't tell me what to do. I have a room here," which confirmed my previous expectations. Except now it escalated, and she was fast approaching me. There is no security guard, and I was starting to feel afraid. I told her if she did not leave the lobby, I would have the police come and remove her. She said to me, "I will do whatever I want. Call the police. See if I care." At this point, my hands were shaking. She was right up in my face. I did not feel like I could further de-escalate the situation, and she was obviously not acting right. I have never, not in my life, had a confrontation like this. I grab my phone and my keys, and I head into my safe zone, which is the laundry room, just to try and remove myself from the situation and calm us both down. Yes, I was still going to call the non-emergency phone number because I needed some assistance in figuring out what to do with her. Because honestly, we don't have any training on this kind of situation. I mostly just hoped that she would scamper off to her room, but she stayed out in the lobby, ringing the service bell, trying to get me to come back and face her. I whispered into my phone so I wouldn't anger that woman any further, watching her from the lobby cameras. The woman left the bell and began to rummage through our Uber cards, yelling about how much of a jerk I was. I watched as she eventually exclaimed that she doesn't have to wait here for this, and she began to walk back to the elevators, all the way up until she stopped and rushed to the office door to try and get to me. She actually pulled on the lock, trying to break in, and this is when I started to freak out to the dispatch. I begged dispatch for help and to send someone right away. Tears started flooding down my face. I have never had someone do this before. I was so scared because she may try to hop the counter, which is really low in one area, and the laundry door does not lock. Dispatch told me an officer was in the area and to stay where I was. The woman abandoned the door and went to the low area of the front desk. I held my breath. The laundry room door was ajar, and I was hiding in a corner, and she could still see into the room, just not where I was. She said, "I'll stuff you in a washing machine," and I just repeated it to the lady on the phone. Thankfully, the crazy woman decided against hopping the counter, and I watched as she went to our north-facing doors. She put on her hood, held the door open for a cigarette, and eventually dispatch hung up on me. I didn't realize that she did, and I just kept talking on the phone. I've never had them hang up on me before, but oh well. At that time, I could tell that this lady was talking to somebody, since her arms were flailing all over the place. I call my partner at the time for comfort, and then the police come and find me. I tell him the story above, reminding him I also have a camera to back me up on this. He asks me what I want to do, and I tell him that she has got to go. The officer advises me against it, which I thought was odd, but I told him that I am the only one on site, and she was no longer welcome at our hotel. He says okay, and she is brought through the front door. Anyways, I'm given her name and her room number, and she and her husband are the second highest shiny you can be for my brand, so I am absolutely shocked by her behavior. It's under her husband's name, whom the officer says is in the room with her. Now, apparently he was a swell guy, and he was sleeping peacefully until the cops came knocking on his door. He didn't seem surprised that his wife got them kicked out of a hotel at 2 in the morning, but I again told the police officer that I have cameras to back me up. I wasn't making up any of this. The cops tell me to go back to the laundry room while the couple wheels their luggage through the lobby and into their vehicle. They were even nice enough to wait while this crazy lady de-iced the windshield, only to then flip the bird to one of the officers as they were leaving. I tried to get a hold of my boss to see if I did everything right, but he has told me in the past that he turns his phone off at night, so I had no luck in getting in contact with him. I'm scared to think about what that woman would have done to me if the door wasn't locked, or if she jumped the counter in some way. I mean, she was really twisting that handle. Do I think that she would have put me in the washing machine? No, but I've never been in any kind of fight before, so I don't really know how to defend myself. I left the lobby to de-escalate the situation, but she wanted more, and I honestly hope that my boss does not refund her. And I also think that this may be the beginning of the end of my job as a night audit, at least at this location. I really need to work somewhere with a security guard and a functioning front door that locks. And while I know there's crazy people everywhere, a little bit of peace of mind at a new job really would go a long way. Honestly, if I was in that situation, just like the original poster, I would have probably called the police as well. This lady went from like 0 to 100 all of a sudden, and she came down into that lobby with a chip on her shoulder very clearly. So yeah, you did the right thing in my opinion. And I would have kicked this lady out as well. She literally said she wanted to stuff you in a washing machine. Like, what is going on right now? Talking to me or anybody else like that is not gonna fly on my watch. You gotta go. So hopefully you have some good luck when it comes to finding a new job, because based on what you just described, that sounds like a very scary situation to be stuck in, and hopefully you find something that's much better suited for what you want to do. My sister has invited a stranger to a family event without consulting me in the first place, and now I really don't know what to do. So last year, my family got into tapping, as well as maple syrup production, from the small sugar bush on the land I co-owned with my sister, as well as our 2 younger siblings. My dad did most of it last year, with some help from the rest of my siblings. I was not able to take time off from work to help out, but this year I am in a different role at work, and I was really looking forward to participating. Over the last few months, my sister has also really gotten into online dating. She has met some people that she's decided to remain friends with. One of the men expressed interest in learning how to tap, so she invited him to participate. She asked her dad, who said it was okay, but she didn't ask me or our other siblings at all. I didn't even find out from her until a few days before that she invited this person, even though we've been talking about tapping and preparing for weeks now. We are also indigenous, and there are some ceremonial aspects and speeches that I have been working to learn, which again, she's known about for a couple of weeks now. And this is all so we can collect our sap in reciprocity with the land. Now, my dad is not indigenous, but he is family, and he has been living in our community and on this land in particular for several years. So I am comfortable with him being present for part of this, but I am absolutely not comfortable with a non-indigenous stranger being there for that. On top of this, there are a couple of factors that are involved. For starters, when she got into online dating, my sister stopped hanging out with me altogether. Before that, we used to spend a couple of days a month together on hikes or thrifting. It hurt me a little, but I try to keep in mind that we are both busy, and she is excited by this new aspect that she's exploring, so it makes sense that she would focus a lot of her time and energy on that. That being said, I was really looking forward to spending this tapping time on the land with our family, all trying to reconnect once again. But now we will have to deal with some stranger being there. My sister has also had a strained relationship with our dad for a while, while. He can be a lot to handle because he talks a lot and is very into conspiracy theories and prepping, which spikes my sister's anxiety altogether. But he has a good heart and cares about us. Over the last few months, she's yelled at him a few times and spoken disrespectfully about him, as well as his tapping knowledge in front of the other members of our community. He doesn't know about the latter, but the former has hurt his feelings. I just feel like it's awful that she was talking down about my dad a few weeks ago in front of other community members who do their own tapping, but now that her friend wants to learn, she is happy to try and take advantage of his knowledge. What should I do? I don't know, it kind of seems like your sister has every right to be there with whoever she wants, and it seems like this only bothers you and literally nobody else in the situation, unless there's something that I'm missing. And sure, she didn't talk to you or anybody else about bringing this stranger over to learn about tapping, but she is a co-owner of the land. I mean, does she have to run everything by you before she does it? It sounds like a lot of the work has already been done without you because you haven't really been involved. But now that your sister's coming into the scene, basically right at the same time as you, is in itself clearly rubbing you the wrong way, and you feel like this guy should not be involved. But honestly, she has every right to invite this guy, in my opinion. So if you really did want to have some kind of conversation with your sister and explain to her that, hey, I want this to be a private moment with family, and then maybe he can come in and help out with tapping, you can certainly do that. But from my perspective, it honestly kind of comes off like you're being really controlling in this situation, and I seriously don't think that's fair for your sister or anybody else involved in this situation in the slightest. I don't seem to be a priority in my boyfriend's life, despite him saying that he cares about me a lot, and at this point, I don't know what to do. So I first want to say that I am really sad. I'm constantly crying because of this guy, because my self-worth has really come into question for me. I met this guy and we became fast friends. Friendship evolved into romance, and we became boyfriend and girlfriend. The first couple of days was absolute heaven. He was the perfect gentleman, and he made me feel all tingly inside. Those feelings didn't last long though. After a while, he just began to straight up ignore me. He didn't talk to me at all, and the few times I tried to initiate conversation with him, he didn't respond for hours on end. I didn't really message him left and right. All I did was text him saying hi or wishing him a good morning. Some people were saying I was being too clingy with him, and honestly, I think they might be right. I think I got much too attached to him way too quickly. The few times he did respond to my messages, he always made up ridiculous excuses as to why he wasn't able to talk to me. His usual excuse was that he was hanging out with friends and was too tired to do anything afterwards. Now, if that was an every once in a while thing, that would be one thing, but that's something that happens nearly every time. I don't feel like I'm even a priority in his life, despite allegedly being his girlfriend. One day, I worked up the nerve to tell him how I felt, and again, he rained down a series of excuses. He said to me, "It's your hormones that are making you like that," as well as several other hurtful things that he said. I told him that I didn't feel like he really wanted to be with me, and he then said to me, "That's not true and you know it. I care about you. You know that, right?" Honestly, right now I just don't know. He barely talks to me as it is, and essentially acts like I don't exist like 95% of the time. I'm so close to breaking up with him, but I'm so hesitant. Why am I so hesitant about this? What should I do? It sounds like this is the early stages of your relationship, so I think there are a few ways you could take this. You could either try to make it work and figure this out some way, or you really could just break up. It seems like those are basically the options you have. And when it comes to trying to make it work, I think it just means you gotta sit down and talk with each other and maybe get to know each other a little bit better. And honestly, the fact that your boyfriend would say that your hormones are making you act this way is a giant red flag in my opinion. Like, I really don't know why he would say that to you, and that honestly comes off as really rude and incredibly disrespectful. And I don't think you're being too clingy or anything like that, but maybe he doesn't understand what you want out of this relationship. Maybe you really do need that text communication between the two of you, essentially so you can know that you're both still in contact and that he still likes you. Maybe that's just something that you need. So maybe communicating with him and explaining what you want out of this relationship really would make a big difference. So hopefully things work out for you, and honestly, even if it doesn't, I wouldn't be too surprised, because it definitely seems like this guy's just a little bit off when it comes to the relationship. And if that really is the case, then I seriously think you deserve much better than this. My entitled manager is refusing to pay me the full amount that I deserve, dancing around the law and claiming any kind of loophole they can find just to keep from paying me my full wage. And now, as a result of my complaining, they're trying to fire me as some kind of retaliation, and I now see myself in a legal battle that I honestly never expected. Here's what happened. So to start things off, I've been in the restaurant game for about 8 years now. My current restaurant is definitely on the shadier side when it comes to employment practices. practices, from threatening to pull shifts if we don't get good Google reviews, to an extremely hostile and incompetent expo who will scream, curse at you, and slam things for nothing at all. They've also been getting fast and loose with the tip jar. I first raised the issue when they implemented a new chart for cleaning side work, in addition to normal side work, that clearly runs afoul of 80-20. The chart says to pick 3 things per shift to complete, and the tasks included cleaning every booth in the restaurant, moving every table and vacuuming, cleaning every outside table, etc. They also started this when we were understaffed on bussers, so I think it was an extra effort to save money on labor from having to hire new ones. Servers were also told to pick up the slack in cleaning the bathrooms. Again, wasn't making a huge deal about it, but hey, this could be a liability if someone makes a ruckus about it. My manager had never heard of 80-20 or any other limitations on what work servers can and cannot do for the tip credit. I showed my GM the law, and he said to email it to him and he'll send it to corporate. A few weeks go by and nothing happens. So I think to myself, okay, whatever, that's on me, I guess. To be fair, I really wasn't expecting it to go anywhere. However, the pot got a bit stirred when I got trained on the bar and did work a full week of training shifts where I couldn't earn any tips, and I saw that they claimed the tip credit for the entire week. Additionally, they scheduled me for an 8 a.m. cleaning shift on my day off, even though we open at 11 o'clock. I'd asked the managers on 3 separate occasions if I would at least get minimum wage for the 8 a.m. cleaning shift. They kept saying yes, but lo and behold, they never changed it, and my pay stub reflected the tip credit applied for all the hours worked. At this point, I drafted up a written request for the unpaid wages, detailing every opening shift I've worked, as well as the training week, the deep cleaning shift, and a couple of notable nights that I had to hang out and do side work despite not having tables for hours. I ultimately did cool off a little bit, and I didn't turn it in. Fast forward a few more weeks to yesterday, and they said corporate finally answered the legal email and said no, as long as we get minimum wages for the week, that's all that's required, which is just flat out a lie. So now I'm angry that they're playing games, so I just say forget it. So I update the request for wages for all opening shifts that I've had, and I decide to go ahead and turn it in. Today, the very next day, as soon as I come in, they pull me into the office. They say they're writing me up for this list I made. I made a very detailed closing list on how to close for a new guy whose first night it was closing. I'd actually gone super detailed on how to time things and properly clean things. For example, nobody ever cleans the tea nozzles, and they get grimy and disgusting and have flies every morning. I mean, I literally made a schematic of the nozzle as well as how to take it apart. I'd also made some jokes, which, for example, there's one girl I'm friends with, but tease her because she's notorious for skipping out on side work. Again, we're friends. I tease her and she laughs and takes it in all good faith. We literally got juice together today on break. I had shown the manager the list when I made it over a week ago, and she kept saying that she loved it. She needs to type that up. I better save it for her, and it's so true. Today, the same manager says she's writing me up because the jokes in the list are unacceptable, but I said that is BS. I wasn't born yesterday, and I was hoping the wage thing could be resolved easily. All I ever wanted was to be acknowledged, but now they're obviously going the retaliation route, and things are going to get messy. They just swore, no, this is unacceptable. This is unprofessional behavior. I asked the girl if she really felt that way about it, and she had not even heard anything about it. She literally said no, but she did find the jokes hilarious. And as I was typing this at the bar after work, a guy that the manager is trying to spend some quality time with was also here as well. I've always been cool with him. I gave him a brief summary of what happened, and he said he's not supposed to tell me this, but yeah, they're trying to get rid of me. My manager already asked him if he knows any bartenders because I'm on the way out. I submitted a complaint to the Department of Labor, but on Monday, I plan to call and update the complaint as soon as possible, with the obvious retaliation efforts in note. If they don't pay the wages within 15 days, I plan to pursue arbitration for the wages, as well as liquidated damages and any damages that result from retaliation. So I really hope it all goes well. Wow, this situation is honestly crazy. The fact that these people would act this way and basically try to throw you under the bus, all because you want to get paid fairly, is completely unacceptable. There is no good reason for that in the slightest. Like, think about it. You just want to get paid what you're worth. You want them to pay you for your time and your efforts. This is not a charity. You're not doing this for free. That is not how this works in the slightest. And the fact that they would try and take advantage of that and not pay you the full amount that you deserve is really toxic and seriously not okay. I don't care what these people are like. I don't care if they're rude or mean or nasty. When you start messing with someone else's money like that, you can expect some kind of legal battle. And it really sounds like the original poster is about to do that. So hopefully you not only lawyer up with this situation, but also that it turns out to be in your benefit, because these people sound awful. And I seriously think that these people need a wake-up call. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My manager fires me after I refused to work since I was not even on the schedule that week. And without my participation in this business, the entire place inevitably shuts down only 8 months later, and I've never been more satisfied in my life. Here's what happened. Many years ago, I worked at a place with lots of arcade games and pizza, similar to a Chuck E. Cheese. I was hired to do maintenance, repair, and setup for these arcade machines. There was already someone there doing this, but they were never allowed to work more than 40 hours a week, and the place was open 7 days a week, 9 hours a day. So that's a total of 63 hours a week, not including prep for opening and cleanup after closing. At the end of my first shift, I was told that I was also expected to help with the cleanup since everyone that worked close had to help with the cleanup as well, and all of my shifts were closing shifts. This meant that I had less time before my morning classes than I expected, especially when I started taking the job, but a few extra bucks was valuable to a starving college student. Fast forward about 2 months, and the new manager, who's fresh out of high school, gets his big boy boots on and starts making rules. The first rule is that a schedule with everyone's hours for the next week will be posted by Friday morning, and the second rule is that you must clock in before your posted shift start time, but not more than 5 minutes before your shift. And the third rule was that you must clock out at the end of your posted shift end time, no more than 5 minutes after. At the end of my first shift, after these rules were created, I clocked out and left everyone else to do the cleanup. To be clear, it's not like I was getting time and a half overtime or anything like that. All I expected was to be paid my normal rate, and they didn't even want to pay me that, so I clocked out and just left. At the beginning of my next shift, they were very angry with me. They expected me to clock out and then work over an hour for free every single shift. These were only 5-hour shifts too, mind you. But you know what? I refused. The next week, they posted a new schedule with my shift ending an hour later. Since everyone saw the list, they all got mad. I guess they were all just fine with wage theft until one person refused. The next week, everyone had an extra hour on their shifts, and at this point, his wage theft scheme had fallen apart. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and this new manager doesn't come in on Thursday. In fact, he doesn't come in until Monday. No schedule is posted, and once Monday afternoon rolls around, I go in to get my check and say to them, "See you next week." I'm told my shift started half an hour ago, and I say that I made plans since I wasn't on the schedule, and no schedule means I couldn't be on it. The manager then pointed to the schedule posted on the wall, printed just hours before, and this was after some of the shifts had already been started. I thanked him for posting next week's schedules early, and then I started to leave. Then I was threatened with termination, and I just kept walking. I came back a week later and talked with a daytime guy doing the same job. He said it was a bad week. Many machines were down, and he was refusing around like $100 in tokens because he was giving much of his time giving refunds, to the point where he didn't have enough uninterrupted time to make any repairs. He was also keeping a roll of masking tape with him just so he could tape over the coin slots as the machines failed. So this meant a lot more use on the remaining machines, which really started to show pretty quickly. I go to clock in and I was told that I had been fired, so I just smiled and I happily walked out. I spoke with a daytime guy a little while later, and apparently they never filled my position, mostly because people with mechanical and electrical knowledge willing to work minimum wage are kind of rare. Instead, he was getting 14 hours a week in time and a half overtime, with a base pay almost twice what I was getting. This extra expense came out of the department budget, which also paid for replacement parts, despite the fact that even before this, it was never enough to buy enough parts. And this from the department budget thing was from the same manager. He simply did not want normal payroll to go up. For a while, basically everyone was carrying around $20 in tokens just to give refunds, but the compensations were unacceptable to the manager, so now only the sales desk could issue refunds, which then meant ordering pizzas took forever, and many people just left angry rather than waiting for a refund. Most machines had tape over the token slots. Now, the backup at the sales desk didn't last long, as few people were coming and no one was booking parties anymore. Other than staff, it was basically empty. It didn't even smell like pizza anymore. With no customers, the daytime guy finally had time to make repairs, but didn't have parts to do most of the repairs. As far as I know, that manager stayed there until the place went under, which is about 8 months after I was fired fired for not working a shift that his own rules said I could not work. And honestly, I've never been more satisfied in my life. What a crazy circumstance. I mean, seriously, the original poster was basically holding that business together. Like, the fact that they were there doing their job meant that the rest of this place was able to keep the lights on. Not to mention this stupid manager. They literally fired the one person who could keep things going instead of just being reasonable and saying, okay, come in next week. I mean, if you want to start these dumb rules and try and have this weird enforcement for no reason, then you should expect somebody eventually to come back at you and show just a little bit of malicious compliance. And I also don't blame the original poster for putting their foot down and saying, no, I'm not going to have you steal my wage. I'm not going to clock out early just to then work another hour later. Like, that's just not going to happen. Sorry. Either pay me what I'm worth, or guess what? I'll find another job. So I really do think it's good for the original poster that they stood up for themselves and they decided to comply maliciously. Because you know what? This manager had it coming. And hopefully this reality check lasts this guy for the rest of his life. A creepy woman is trying to track down one of our guests at the hotel I work at. And the way she was acting and freaking out on us truly was incredibly creepy. Here's what happened. So for reference, this happened back in summer of 2022. I work the 3 to 11 shift at the hotel. So I deal with most, if not all, of the check-ins. This particular guest checked in at around 6 or 7 o'clock. For privacy reasons, I'll just call him Jack. That's not his real name. At check-in, everything went smoothly. Jack seemed like a nice, quiet man. Before he went down to his room, he said something that my coworker and I should have taken as a forewarning for the rest of the night. He asked us to not transfer any calls to his room. Later, a woman comes in asking if Jack is there. My coworker tells her that as per policy, we cannot tell her that information. She then thanks him and just leaves. Shortly after that, a phone call comes in, and this time from a slightly different sounding woman who claimed to be from Domino's Pizza, asking for a room number for Jack so she could bring up his pizza. She sounded different enough, and we were really busy as it is, that we didn't really think much of it, and so we just gave the number to her and went about checking other guests in. About 5 minutes later, we receive a call from Jack asking to be moved since we gave out his location. We realized then what just happened, we apologized, and we promptly moved him again. 15 minutes pass by, and we receive another call, this time from the woman. She asked to be transferred to Jack's room, and in the interest of rectifying the mistake that we had made, I tell her that no one under that name is staying here. She tells me that that's just absolute BS, as we had apparently transferred her there. This is when we figured out that the Domino's woman and this woman were in fact the same person. So I guess she's correct, obviously, but I'm not going to tell her that. Instead, I say, I'm sorry, but I don't know what to tell you, ma'am. She then demands to speak to a manager. And the thing is, my managers are only there from 8 until 4 o'clock during the week. So there isn't even a current manager there for her to talk to. I tell her this and she gets angry. She started to cuss me out and threatened to call corporate on me. In response, I say to her, ma'am, if you want to, you can go right ahead and do that. Have a great night. And then I promptly hung up the phone on her. I would have thought that this would have been the end of it, but I was sorely mistaken. Not even 5 minutes later, I pick up the phone and she's there again, yelling at me and swearing at me and generally just being awful. And when she did that, I immediately hung up again. My coworker calls me to the back office and shows me the cameras. On them, we can clearly see the woman and an unknown man trying the exterior doors around the wing where Jack's room was. We have a can of pepper spray behind the desk, so we grab it and walk down to the halls. But by the time we got there, they were already gone. When we get back to the desk, we notice a silver SUV with a woman and the man in it lurking around in the front of the building. They did this for about an hour and finally left just as we were about to call the cops. And that was the last we ever saw of her that night, and I was honestly very creeped out by the entire experience. First and foremost, I want to say that the hotel is 100% at fault. They gave out this guy's location after he expressly said, hey, I don't want to have my information given out. I want to be privately in this hotel without anybody knowing that I'm here. But the people at the front literally violated that almost immediately. I mean, how inappropriate is that? This guy's trying to sleep in this hotel. He is clearly trying to lay low from the psychopath that is stalking him. And what does the front desk go ahead and do? Oh, they just give out his number to the random pizza person who is clearly just this lady trying to find him. Like, how awful at your job do you have to be to let that happen? Not even 15 minutes after this guy checked in. Completely inappropriate and so unacceptable in my opinion. If I was the guy that had this happen to them, I would have stormed right down to the front desk and demanded a refund, because I wouldn't want to stay at a hotel that's going to compromise my safety. Because look at the cameras, look at all that was going on. These people clearly had ulterior motives, and you probably put this guy guy in a lot of danger. So hopefully if you still do work in the hotel business, maybe be just a little bit more mindful of what people want out of their experience, because you straight up jeopardize this guy's privacy, and that, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. My entitled sister-in-law says some awful things about me behind my back, creating horrible rumors and awful hearsay, all after I gave her and her husband the opportunity to live in my apartment while they tried to find someplace new. But after a while, I simply had had enough, and I requested that they leave sooner than later. Here's what happened. So I'm a 29-year-old female, and I have two sons, one age 9 and one age 10, whose dad passed away 4 years ago. I have my own 2-bedroom place that I rent that I've lived in for about 5 years now. And while it is only a 2-bedroom unit, it is still pretty big. 2 bedrooms upstairs and a bathroom with a shower, toilet, and bathtub, and a living area room that is closed off and has its own door. Then a kitchen and dining area, and then also another bathroom downstairs attached to the laundry room, which only has a toilet and a sink. And all of this information is just context because it's relevant to help understand the rest of the story. So the year my son's father passed away, about 4 years ago in September, is when he passed, and the funeral was early October. So the next month in early November, my brother and sister-in-law found themselves homeless. They had only one child at the time, which is my sister-in-law's child from a previous relationship. He's about a year old, and my brother had stepped up because his own dad wasn't in the picture. So I offer them my son's room for a few weeks until they can get on their feet and get on their way, which I didn't mind, and also my sons were okay with it. They had to pay me rent and board of $300 for a fortnight. We all thought it was reasonable, as my sister-in-law gets paid nearly $2,000 a fortnight in government benefits. So as time goes on, I realized that my sister-in-law is a very, very lazy person and mother. I do not like mother shaming one bit, but this was different. She was leaving dirty, used diapers everywhere. In the bathroom, in the living room, anywhere she changed the child basically. No matter how many times I asked her to please remember to put the diapers in the bin straight away please, it would continuously happen. I also help with her child like babysitting and feeding as well, because every evening at dinner time, she would complain of being too tired or sick to leave the room, so I would feed him for her. I felt like she was taking advantage of my kindness because it got to the point where I was doing everything for her infant child that she should have been doing herself. She also smokes the herb, if you know what I mean, every single day, and it's like she just wanted to lay around in the room. I spoke to my brother numerous times about how I felt, and he would speak to her, but she would never change. He worked Monday through Friday, and I swear that she hated that. She would complain to him that she doesn't want him to work because she missed him in the day, and that she gets enough benefits that he doesn't need to work. So one day I found out from another family member that my sister-in-law was running me down behind my back, complaining that I'm nasty to her when my brother is at work during the day. Now, I have a condition, and I'm on disability because of it, so I don't work, but I also study online, and I'm on site on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Also, not to mention that I take care of her child for her on days when I am home. I was never nasty to her because that's just not the kind of person that I am. Also, me and my sons were also still grieving. I eventually got fed up and said that they had to find other arrangements by next week. My brother was fine with that, but guess what? She wasn't. It was coming up to Christmas, and she said she can't leave because Christmas is in a few weeks and her kid deserves a proper Christmas. I explained that my sons and I needed our space back, and that I was emotionally and physically drained from the grief and also the stress of having to look after her baby for her. And I was cleaning up for her as well all the time, all while she just sits around and does nothing. And she was trying to use this time to look for and apply for other rentals. She didn't like that and suggested that I turn my lounge room into a 3rd bedroom. That way, so my sons could get their own room back. And she was using that against me because they were bunking in my bedroom with me at the time. I said I couldn't believe she had the audacity to even suggest that, especially after all the awful things she said to me behind my back to other family members. We then eventually got into a massive argument after that. She then said that she was pregnant and called me evil for telling her she had to find somewhere else to stay. But you know what? I really did not believe her, to be completely honest with you. They ended up leaving a few days later. My brother didn't want me and my boys to have to feel like garbage just because of the lies that my sister-in-law was making up. He didn't leave my sister-in-law because he felt obligated to be there, mostly because of her claiming to be pregnant. Plus, he was attached to her little boy and saw him as his own. Thankfully, he did not believe her lies about about me because he knows that I'm not like that. Plus, he said that he loved her, so I respected that. But I told him that I honestly think that she's a narcissist. Yeah, this lady sounds absolutely obnoxious, and I would also label her as a narcissist. She treated your home like some kind of lounge, and she didn't do anything. She spent her entire time being there just sitting around, not looking for another place to live, and basically taking advantage of your kindness. Because honestly, in her eyes, why should she leave? You get to take care of her kids? She's got basically a free place to stay? This is all good in her eyes, which honestly is unacceptable, and it's so irresponsible it's not even funny. And I'm honestly blown away that this guy would even stick around with this lady. She's clearly taking advantage of him, and she's probably lying about being pregnant. I really would not put it past her. So regardless of what happens, I'm just glad that this lady doesn't live with you anymore. She does not sound like a good person, and she was clearly taking advantage of your kindness. And hopefully moving forward in the future, you don't have to deal with her entitled behavior anymore. An entitled Karen tries to get me fired, all because she hit me with her electric scooter at Walmart, falsely claiming that I was the reason she crashed. Things escalated so much that she even showed up to our store with a lawyer next to her. Here's what happened. So when I was in college, I used to work at Walmart, initially as a courtesy clerk. The town I lived in easily exceeded 100 degrees Fahrenheit during the summer months. By state law, the store had to give us a 5-minute break inside just to cool down after 2 rounds of collecting carts and provide us with beverages so that we can stay hydrated. The beverage they usually gave us was Gatorade, and this will be relevant to the story. After a couple of hours, it was time for me to take my first official 15-minute break. I filled a cup of Gatorade and proceeded to make my way to the break room. There was a bit of a blind spot walking past the registers, so I stopped and looked both ways down the aisle to make sure I wouldn't accidentally bump into anyone. The closest person to me was one of our regular shoppers, an older lady who is the entitled Karen of this story. This entitled Karen has amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or Lou Gehrig's disease, the same condition that Stephen Hawking had. Because of this, she had to use an electric wheelchair and lived at a local assisted living center. Due to her condition, there were 2 rules she had to follow whenever she shopped at the store in order to prevent accidental collisions with people. For starters, she must always be accompanied by an employee from the assisted living center whenever she shopped there. And also, she had to keep the wheelchair speed to one of the lowest settings. Knowing these rules and seeing how far down the aisle she was, I knew I could get across quick enough before she got anywhere near me. After taking a step or 2 down into the aisle, I immediately noticed 2 things. For starters, she did not have anyone with her from the assisted living center, and also she was driving the wheelchair much faster than she was supposed to. She was on a collision course with me, so instinctively I tried to jump back out of the way to avoid getting hit, but unfortunately it was way too late. She hits me while I was in the air. I fell to the ground and I spilled my Gatorade all over the wheelchair. The lady loses control of the chair and starts spinning around in circles. She's flailing her arms and screaming with what limited mobility she had, and nearly hit me a second time, but I managed to roll out of the way. I knew I had to try and stop her before she hit someone else, so I grabbed the handlebar on the back of the wheelchair, hoping I could at least slow her down. This didn't work, and instead, she dragged me around in circles in the middle of the aisle. Several coworkers and shoppers quickly rushed in and stopped the lady, who seemed to be okay, just a little bit startled. But when I tried to stand up, 2 male shoppers held me down. One of them leaned over me and said, "You're gonna be alright, sir. Everything's gonna be fine." He turned his head and started yelling, "I need a first aid kit." I could hear a lady in the background also scream that somebody needed to call 911. So I'm just laying there and I'm wondering what on earth happened to me. Sure, I was going to have a nice bruise on my hip from when I hit the floor, but besides that, I felt fine. I quickly discovered why the customers were panicking. The flavor of the Gatorade that we had that day was the fruit punch one. Some of it splashed on my face when the lady hit me. The customers who witnessed the incident thought I busted my head open when I hit the ground. I had to assure them that this was nothing, it was just Gatorade, and that I was fine. A member of management eventually showed up to document the entire incident. After I gave him my statement, I was finally able to take my break. I was even given an extra 5 to 10 minutes so I could clean up and recuperate from what had just happened. And this is where I thought the story would end, but honestly, I was completely wrong. A couple of weeks later, I was called back to the manager's office, the store manager, who will call Kate, that's not her real name, as well as several assistant managers, all of them sitting there waiting for me. Kate told me to take a seat and asked if I remember the incident from a few weeks ago with the handicapped lady in the electric chair and the Gatorade Gatorade. I just chuckled and said, how could I forget? Kate said, well, that lady was just in my office and she had a lawyer with her. She wanted to sue the store, claiming that she suffered mental distress from that incident, and as part of her lawsuit, she wanted your employment with the company terminated, claiming that you were the one responsible for the collision. And when Kate said that to me, I was absolutely speechless. I could not believe what I was hearing. But Kate quickly put my mind at ease. She said, don't worry, you're not in any trouble. We showed the lady and her lawyer the security footage from the incident, and I reminded her of the rules that she knew she had to follow whenever she shopped at the store, just so we could prevent any collisions from happening. But she decided to break them anyways, and that she should consider herself lucky that she hit a store employee who only suffered a minor injury, because if she had hit another customer and that customer suffered a serious injury, she would be held responsible for the collision and would have had a major lawsuit on her hands. The assisted living center would also be at fault for somehow allowing her to leave the center on her own without their notice. But if she still wanted to sue, she can try, but she won't win. This entitled Karen's lawyer knew they didn't have a snowball chance in heck of winning this one in the slightest, so the two of them just left. Kate said that since I was the employee involved in this incident, she thought I would want to know what this entitled Karen attempted to do, stating that I would get a kick out of it. I will admit, it does add a nice punchline to the story, but I truly wish I could have been there in the manager's office to watch this encounter with the entitled Karen, as well as the rest of the store's managers. It must have been nice to watch her face drop when she realized she absolutely did not have a case and she would not be winning this fight. Wow, that entitled Karen is an absolute scumbag. I mean, how low do you have to be to not only try and throw the employee under the bus, who was trying to save you from crashing into people, by the way, but also to then demand that they get fired because of your stupid mistake? Like, they literally did nothing wrong. They didn't do anything to you. They were only trying to help you not crash into other people. And if anything, the original poster probably has some kind of grounds to try and take them to civil court. I mean, they really should be lucky that the original poster is not pursuing this legally. So good for the manager for actually being on their side and not allowing this entitled Karen to basically walk all over the original poster, because this really could have gone a lot differently. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Today, I messed up by hiring a house cleaner to help me get my awful apartment in order. But instead of cleaning the apartment like we hired her to do, she instead takes a private video of the apartment just to have for her own personal record. And now, as a result, we are demanding a refund. Here's what happened. So my apartment is an absolute train wreck. There's a million reasons why we fall behind on housework, but my top 5 are as follows. For starters, I'm a full-time nursing student in my last semester, and I'm currently working 24 to 36 hours a week. My significant other is a full-time teacher, and we both have ADHD and depression, and no one picks up after themselves. My mom is also a chronically messy person, just like myself and my significant other, and we are trying to do better, but we are struggling. So my mom had someone come in and help her get her apartment cleaned, and then gifted us a visit from a different house cleaner to help us out. The house cleaner she already paid to visit us is the daughter of someone my mom and I both used to work with. So I was a bit reluctant to have someone that I know be aware of the state of our apartment, but she was trying to get her cleaning service started, and my mom wanted to help her out. So I get it scheduled with this cleaner, but the night before she's supposed to come in, I had been studying for a big exam, and I was trying to crawl out of my depressive episode and just function. So I did not have the chance to actually pre-clean the apartment before she came over. I texted her that night asking to reschedule for a time when I had a better chance to pre-clean, explaining that I had an exam I desperately needed to study for, and I had not been able to pre-clean in the slightest. She adamantly assures me that it's fine, not to worry about it, to focus on my exam and let her handle the mess, and I reluctantly agreed. Wednesday, she texts me that she's running late and won't be there before I leave for school. We make arrangements for her to let herself in, and I don't hear anything else until the afternoon when I turn my phone back on after my exam. And when I do, I have a text message that just says, "Hey, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to reschedule." So I respond by saying, "That's okay, is something wrong?" She says the mess is more than she was expecting and that she can come back another time after I've had a chance to pre-clean like I said. It wasn't a wasted trip anyways, because she had to deliver something to my mom. Friday, when I talk to my mom again, I tell her about the cleaning lady and how she had to reschedule because the mess was way too much. So we are going to be working on cleaning this week, all while we are on spring break. My mom texted the cleaning lady, much to my chagrin, because she was frustrated that she hadn't been notified as the customer that services were not actually harshly rendered. And that's when the cleaning lady tells my mom that it was just way too much. And she's only telling her this mother to mother, that if her daughter was living like we are, she would want to know and she would be concerned. Then the cleaning lady offers to send my mom the video she took of my apartment to show her what she's talking about. And she's again only doing this mother to mother out of concern. My mom and I were both very upset that the video was taken, and even more so that she offered to send it to my mom. My mom told her basically that she's aware of the condition and that we need help, and that's why she hired a house cleaner to help us. My mom is asking for a refund because we both feel absolutely betrayed, and we are not comfortable with this cleaning lady coming back later. The cleaning lady basically said she will have to wait 2 weeks because she used it to pay rent, which is fine, whatever, and I totally understand that, but honestly, I don't think we'll ever bring that lady back to our apartment ever again. That is seriously the worst thing that could have possibly happened. What an absolute betrayal of trust. You bring this person in to try and clean up your apartment since you have not had the chance to do it yourself. And not only does she not do it because it's too overwhelming, but she also takes a video of your house without your knowledge. Like that wasn't listed in the text message. Like she didn't explain that she violated your privacy and took a video of everything that was going on in your apartment. Like that is not okay in the slightest. And the fact that she was trying to send this over to the mom as some kind of excuse is, in my opinion, just that. It's a horrible excuse. She probably didn't even take that video to show it to the mom, but probably took it to show it to her friends and probably show it to other people and be like, wow, you know the original poster? Look how messy their house is. So personally, I don't blame you for looking for a refund and telling this cleaning lady to simply take a hike, because what she did is unbelievably disrespectful, and I seriously don't see her ever succeeding in the cleaning business if this is how she's gonna treat her clients. My coworkers are spreading a rumor that I'm spending quality time with one of my coworkers and have taken it upon themselves to tell my boyfriend this fake rumor as well. And now my relationship looks like it might be falling apart, and I seriously don't know what to do. So my boyfriend and I are on terrible terms right now, and I just don't know what to do. I have never been in a situation like this, and I'm kind of freaking out. So to back up, I work in a restaurant with a bar, and I'm also in college. Our relationship is very good and healthy, and I pretty much live with him. He is very sweet, funny, intelligent, and very hot. We have been together for 2 years with no major problems. We have had small problems that were easily solvable, but that's about it. Now there is a guy at work who's about 29 years old that has been there for about 5 months now. There is a group of friends I have at work who I hang out with sometimes after work. He is included in this group now, and usually he goes with us whenever we do something. He likes to flirt and has hit on me several times, and I shut it down when he takes it too far. When we are at friends' houses, he always wants to talk to me. He wants to sit next to me, touch me in a joking way, except when my boyfriend is there, of course. Someone gave him my number, or he may have gotten it from work somehow, and now he texts me every once in a while. Unless he asks me a specific question about something, I just ignore him. It is annoying sometimes, but it's not frequent. I have talked to my boyfriend about this, and he will get upset about it sometimes, but this guy never acts like this when my boyfriend is actually around. He has offered to talk to him, but I told him not to do it, that I could handle it, and it would just hurt me at work. He hadn't done anything. He just didn't like him. A few nights ago at work, I had a break, so I went into the walk-in just to vape. He followed me and started talking to me while in there. He was sitting directly across from me. A guy we work with walked in, and he had his hand on my leg. I didn't think much of this at the time because it wasn't that unusual. He would do something like this, and I would tell him to stop. He would laugh about it and then apologize. This has now turned into a huge rumor at work that we are apparently spending quality time together. Someone told my boyfriend about this, but this whole thing's been twisted into this guy being all over me or making out. Last night when I got home, he accused me of cheating on him, as well as spending quality time with this guy, and we got into a huge fight. I told him what actually happened and have been trying to convince him that nothing is going on, but he doesn't know what to believe right now, and I can't really blame him really, when it's a rumor that he was told directly. I gave him my phone and I blocked this guy completely. I have offered to quit my job, but he hasn't told me one way or the other. But now I don't want to go back to that place at all. My boyfriend texted him, and later they got into a screaming match. He told my boyfriend that he could have spent quality time with me anytime he wanted, and I guess I'm lucky he didn't lie and say that we were, since they were fighting. This is my first real relationship, and I love my boyfriend. I am scared of losing him over this, or our relationship being permanently damaged. I don't know what else to do to convince him him or how to fix this in the first place. What should I do? Personally, if I was in your situation and some guy was following me into the walk-in just to touch my leg, not to mention all the other instances where this guy has touched you inappropriately, but I would be going to HR or management and being like, hey, this is what's going on. This guy is touching me inappropriately and you need to do something about this. Because that, first and foremost, is unacceptable, and that should have been addressed a long time ago. I don't care if he's part of your friend group. I don't care if you have any kind of camaraderie with him or anything along those lines. The second this guy starts touching you without your permission is the second that something needs to be done about that. And as for your supposed friends at this workplace, all of them are so toxic for spreading that rumor, instead of going to you directly and being like, hey, what's going on? Like, the fact they would perpetuate this and then go to your boyfriend just to be like, this is what's going on, is unbelievable to me. They were never your friend in the first place, and this is clearly some kind of plan to try and ruin your relationship. So hopefully you're able to do something about this guy at work, while also trying to maintain your relationship with your boyfriend, because the actions that are being taken against you, as well as these false rumors that are being spread around by your coworkers, absolutely should have consequences. Today, I messed up by basically crossing a boundary with my friend that has made him very standoffish and basically ruined our friendship, and I seriously don't know what to do. So I'm a 31-year-old female, and about a year ago, I became friends with a guy from work. Let's call him Jake. That's not his real name. We started chatting at a company party, we got along, and hung out outside of work a few times. He was going through some stuff at the time. He recently got dumped and was about to graduate from college and was trying to figure out what to do for the rest of his life. Many of these struggles resonated with my 20-something-old self, and it felt good to be able to impact some wisdom. On the other hand, he was confident and assertive, and I felt perhaps in that sense, I could learn a little from him. I was also just happy that someone cool wanted to hang out with me. I am a pretty anxious person, and I don't have a vibrant social life. Now, Jake was cute in a way that was hard for me to ignore, but he was never a viable partner for me. The thought was there at first, but it dissipated once he started to come to me for relationship advice regarding other women. I would never pursue someone who was not interested in me. There was also the age difference, and the fact that we are in different places in our lives. While I was still a little attracted to him, I was firmly settled on not acting on it and not letting it show. I'm not normally very feminine, but I think I acted even more boyish around him just so that it was crystal clear that no flirting was happening. At one point, Jake invited me to his birthday party. I didn't want to disappoint a friend on his birthday, so I went. But I get anxious in social groups, especially if there are people I don't know, so I drank a lot to make myself at ease. After the party, Jake became more absent, saying that he had to study, which made sense. He agreed to meet up when we had more time, but he didn't follow up. And as bad as I am at reading social cues, I felt that he might not be very interested in seeing me, so I just kind of backed off. I felt a little sad about it though, because I valued him as a friend, and I didn't understand what made him change his mind about me. So about 6 months later, I messaged him, and after we caught up, I asked him directly if there was a reason he had blown me off, to which he replied that at the party, I was all over him, and I had crossed his boundaries when he told me to stop. He said that he liked me, but not in a romantic way, and that was way too much for him to deal with. I was flabbergasted, apologized profusely, and asked about details, convinced that this was something that had been erased from my memory. After a few days of mulling it over, I did recall a situation like this, but I remembered it a little bit differently. In my drunken mind, I was just showing friendly affection. I did something like rest my head on his shoulder, and when he pulled away and said he didn't want to be touched, I almost took it as a joke and purposefully touched his arm, to which he reacted very nervously, so I cut it off. This is an awful thing I do when I'm under the influence. I think it's funny to do something someone says that they dislike just to see how they react. One time, a guy was going off about how he loved his shoes and hated it when someone stepped on them, and I thought it would be funny to do exactly that. He screamed at me, I apologized instantly, while also apologizing again later on when I sobered up, and it didn't ruin our friendship, but I admit that it was stupid. It was a childish thing to do, and I don't know why on earth I did that. Honestly though, I don't think I'm gonna do that ever again after this. Anyways, I trust his account better than my memory. If I had just been friendly, I wouldn't have made him so uncomfortable, and let's face it, I do have a history of becoming scandalous when I drink. In the past, I have woken up next to people with little to no recollection of the events, and had to explain to them that this wasn't in fact the beginning of our future together. I had instead just gotten wasted. I don't do that anymore. I barely even go out anymore, but I am what I am, and what I apparently am is a professional creep creep that bothers young men. I do wish he had told me straight up, instead of pretending everything was okay for months. But I understand that it was well within his rights. Maybe we could have stayed friends, but maybe what I did was unforgivable. I have a friend who crossed my physical boundaries once, and it changed how I felt about him altogether, but I didn't cut him off. He apologized, and I knew he understood it was not an okay thing to do to anyone. We survived it in general, but we had known each other for years by that point. Maybe that friendship had a more solid foundation to begin with. This whole thing messed me up pretty badly. I told one friend who said that he had seen me under the influence and flirty in the past, and it wasn't something that would traumatize anyone. He said it was normal for me to feel embarrassed, but it wasn't that big of a deal. It's been a few months, and it keeps popping up in my head. I feel so ashamed, and my self-esteem is at an all-time low. I guess I'm also just a little concerned about if this gets out. Although we don't really know a lot of the same people, I would maybe like to talk it through with him, but I don't think he's interested in talking, and I want to respect his wishes. I do realize that I am at fault here, and my sense of self-worth is none of his concern. I don't know how to process this by myself though. How do I recover from this? Do I even deserve to recover from this? What should I do? It really sounds like you might want to take some steps to stop drinking altogether, because what you've described is really scary. I mean, you didn't even remember this interaction in that way, and in the past you've also woken up next to people that you literally don't know. Like, that is really dangerous behavior. If Jake was a different person with ulterior motives, he easily could have taken advantage of your inebriated state, and that in and of itself could have been awful. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. You really are at fault in this situation. You crossed a serious boundary on his end, and there's really no reason for him to have to hear about your self-worth issues. So hopefully you're able to find help for that kind of situation, while also finding some kind of sobriety in your life, because what you described is really scary, and this very easily could have gone in a different direction if you were not careful. My entitled older sister refuses to take her kids back after me and my great-grandmother babysit them for several days, and even when I bring them right to her house, she threatens to call the police on me just to get me to try and keep her kids for a few more days. But I wasn't having it, and I refused to back down. Here's what happened. So basically, my sister called my mom the other day and tried to convince my mom to pick up the kids and bring them to my house for my great-grandmother to watch, without okaying it with my great-grandmother first. My mom obviously refused because she had work, and I had the car my great-grandmother and I share, since I use the car during the week for work. So on Saturday, my great-grandmother went to pick up the kids as usual so they could spend the night with us and go to church the next day. After church, Nana will keep the kids for a few more hours before taking them home. However, when she took the kids home, Candy blatantly refused to take them and made many excuses as to why she couldn't and wouldn't take them. Candy, by the way, is the name of my older sister, and that is not her real name. So I had just woken up from a nap because I'm sick, and I was confused to see my great-grandmother coming back inside with the kids with her. Now, to clarify, it's spring break for the kids, so naturally, my sister didn't want to deal with them. My great-grandmother was really upset because she has things that she has to do during the week that she can't take the kids to, and she was so angry she was almost in tears. So I decided to take it upon myself to let the kids chill for a bit and play, while I had a cup of hot tea to soothe my throat and get myself something to eat before I loaded them back up in the car and drove them home. The two older kids were really upset with their mom because they were excited to see her, and she basically just straight up rejected them, especially my oldest nephew. He got really upset when we were loading him back up in the car. Luckily, we managed to keep him calm with some YouTube videos, and my Nana went back inside so I could take the kids home. When I got to my sister's house, she opened the door and got incredibly upset when I told her I brought the kids home. I calmly explained that I am sick and our heat went out, which it actually did. My great-grandmother is relying on a tiny space heater at the moment, and I'm using a heated blanket. This is the third time our heat has gone out, so our house is pretty cold. My sister told me that she was not taking the kids and demanded that I take them back to my house. She was telling me about all the stuff that she had to do during the week, and that she had talked to Nana about keeping the kids for this week. But that was a blatant lie. I kept my voice low and I tried not to argue with her. Also, I wouldn't scare the kids, as they were still in the car, but the driver's side door was open. My sister told me I was scaring the kids. Meanwhile, I was talking low and non-aggressively, and she was standing on the doorstep and was leaned over yelling in my face. I just calmly told her, Candy, either you take your kids or I call the cops and report you for abandonment. These are your only two options. Taking them back to my house is not an option. Basically, I was gentle parenting my older sister. She then threatened to call the cops cops on me, claiming that I forcibly took them out of my great-grandmother's care just to bring them back to her. And that's when things escalated to a point that I honestly never expected. As a matter of fact, I did not take them out of my great-grandmother's care. Nana happily agreed to let me take the kids home because her back and leg was really bothering her, and she was exhausted. I told her the cops would not take her seriously if she called them for that, but I was more than ready to handle it if it came to that. Then she started the shaking and fake crying, with no tears of course, telling me that she's too overwhelmed, she's dealing with DHS, and she has a mediation hearing to find out if she keeps the kids or not. I simply told her that wasn't my problem, and I gave her the only two options that I had. Oh, and she also accused me of calling DHS on her the moment she opened the door and saw me standing there. I had no idea that DHS was called on her again, and I told her that. She actually seemed to believe me for once and place the blame on my ex-brother-in-law. She then told me to give her a minute and went inside and closed the door. So I just went back to the car and I sat in the driver's seat to wait for her. The two older kids were freaked out, and the baby was calling out for his mother. After 10 minutes, she came outside and was on the phone, then went back inside for 5 more minutes. I honestly thought she was calling the cops on me. My niece was scared, and I was thinking that I'd have to call the cops on her. Because what kind of mother refuses to take her own children, especially when she knows that the house she wanted her kids to stay in for a week no longer has any heat? Like, what is she thinking? Eventually, she came back out and started to unbuckle the kids. The oldest nephew refused to get out of the car for his mom, so I had to pick him up and take him out of the car and draped his coat over him. My older sister literally tried to physically intimidate me by standing over me and yelling in my face. Then she threatened to call the cops on me, and then she started fake crying and trying to guilt trip me again before she realized that I was not giving in. Now, I hate confrontation, so I was having a silent panic attack with my heart pounding and my hands shaking, but I refused to play into her act and I just kept calm, specifically because I didn't want to scare the kids. I had to soothe and comfort the older two children while we were waiting on their mom when she went back into the house because my niece was about to cry, thinking I was going to jail. Candy's entitlement just baffles me, and the fact that she tried to lie to my face, saying that she and Nana had talked all weekend about her keeping the kids, is absolutely ridiculous. She just didn't want to keep her kids over spring break. Luckily, Nana and I have improved our relationship, and she wasn't upset with me at all for taking the kids home. She's old, she's tired, and in a lot of pain now, so she really did not have any energy to take care of the kids. I did end up calling my ex-brother-in-law when I was driving home and explain the situation to him so he could tell his lawyer and get it put on the file he has against my sister. My sister also refused to let me see what the inside of her house looked like, and she is missing the entire top row of her teeth. She looks nearly 50 years old at the ripe age of 25. I will probably make a DHS report to explain everything that happened this evening, and if she does try to accuse me of doing that, I'll own up to it. There was also an unfamiliar car parked in front of her house, and there was somebody inside the house. Her boyfriend doesn't have a car because his license got revoked due to several DUIs, and the last one resulted in him losing his car because he totaled it while under the influence. Honestly, I feel so bad for the kids, and I really hope I never have to deal with that kind of situation ever again. What an awful situation indeed. Like, your sister sounds like an absolute train wreck, and I can completely understand why the ex-brother-in-law is probably fighting for full custody, because this lady sounds like an awful mother. Like, think about it. She's not even wanting her kids back during spring break. She basically said, "No, I don't want them. You can keep them." Like, what are you thinking? That's crazy to me. Not to mention the fact that she was obviously upsetting her kids, like physically upsetting them. They even refused to get out of the car because they were so angry with her. And if I was a kid in that situation, I'd be upset too. So just from what you told us, it really does sound like your sister does not have it all together, and hopefully for the sake of those kids, they're able to get into a home that actually will take care of them. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked down below in the description. My previous job at a hotel was an absolute nightmare, and after being mistreated for 11 days, I decided to quit straight up. Here's what happened. So I wanted to detail some of my jobs I've had previously that led up to the one job I'm going to talk about today. For starters, I used to work at a haunted hotel. I left that and I went to work at a Worst Eastern. I ended up losing that gig for literally no reason, which is no big deal. If there's one thing I learned from 20 years in radio, people get fired, and they get fired for stupid reasons. It's just life. So I got a job at a new hotel about a week after losing the other one. I walked into a job interview and I got it on the spot. They were even promising me that I could move up to management before I even started. I thought to myself, this is it. This is where I'm going to finally find my spot. I'm going to run this joint and everything is going to be completely fine. Now, there's this thing that tends to happen to me whenever something seems too good or too perfect for me, and that's where I think to myself, well, it isn't at all. To start with, everyone in the hotel community that I knew told me this place was an absolute trap. They had been robbed multiple times, all while I was working at other hotels on that same street. And while the hotel did change its name and start over, nothing got better. Some highlights included the guy training me on my first day. For one, I actually knew more about the reservation software and the system than he did. I actually knew more about it than my boss, who literally never came to work unless she was forced to do so against her will. Now, thanks to using the software myself for 4 years, plus being good friends with one of the people who provides tech support to the company, and my boyfriend worked on this software for 10 years at least, so needless to say, I was in a good spot. If there was a trick to something when my boyfriend and I worked together, he would show me how to do it. So I was light years ahead of the guy who was trying to train me. Now, my problem with him is on my first day, while we're standing there during a lull in the day, instead of telling me about the hotel, he starts telling me about the owners and how awful they are. The other male coworker that I had when I worked my first night shift also made me incredibly uncomfortable, in the sense that he was telling me that if he was my boyfriend, which honestly you would never be that lucky, he said he wouldn't allow me to work at night, that a woman's place is at home, especially at night. Keep in mind, this absolute jewel of a human being was also young enough to be my child. Literally, I could have had this kid at 20 years old, and he's standing there telling me where my place was, and that he clearly thought ill of my boyfriend for even allowing me to work at night. Oh, and by the way, this is literally the first time I met him. Now, most of the time we worked alone after training was over, unless you worked in the mornings. Then you had a housekeeping staff there, but for the most part, they steered clear of me and wouldn't talk to me. I've dealt with this at hotels before. The majority of housekeeping are Mexican Americans, and they've been treated like absolute garbage by snobby white kids at the front desk who make all kinds of assumptions about if the housekeepers are legal or even speak English. Like, it's brutal to see up close, and I shut that garbage down when I see it. But I never had the opportunity to get friendly with our housekeepers. And apparently, I did not want to, because the same day I was told by my disembodied voice of a boss on the phone that I had to start putting my purse in the lunchroom or on top of the housekeeping lockers instead of leaving it on the floor behind the desk out of the way, I got robbed. I hate telling people this part, but it's true. I had a pair of sunglasses go missing and $40 disappear out of my wallet. Before you say, well, why didn't you watch the cameras? Let me reassure you, there weren't any cameras on the property. Not at all. Not anywhere. Not even watching the desk where I was counting cash twice a shift. Another fun feature of my job duties at this hotel was if I worked a night shift, I was literally the only person on property after 9 p.m. At 10:30 p.m., we were supposed to collect the barbecue tools from the barbecue area and bring them inside. But I thought to myself, why though? Who on earth is going to steal a spatula? Well, apparently the guy who jumped out of the bushes at me one night while I was doing this. I still have no idea if it was a guest or a homeless person, but I think he was pretty surprised to find out that I have no problem hitting someone with a spatula and the barbecue tongs. We had another homeless guy break into our pool using a plastic hanger to lift the latch because we didn't chain the gate at this madhouse. I said screw it and let him keep swimming in his underwear because I was not going out there to fight some weirdo with a plastic hanger. Also, as a side note, this was only 11 days into my job, but even still there was more that went on. The owners of this place had a dog that they would bring into the hotel. It wasn't a pet-friendly hotel, but of course the owner's dog isn't a pet. The dog would hang out with us at the desk while the owner did whatever they pretended to do, including never wondering where the general manager was, because she was never there. One day I saw the owners go out to their car and they left the dog with us, so I assumed that they would be right back. Logic has no place in that building though, and I get a call 3 hours later from the owners, who have in fact left in their car to go to Oregon. They had just forgotten their dog in the office and wondered if I could take it home for the weekend. So I thought to myself, no, this is not happening. Thankfully, another coworker who came in said to me, oh, this happens all the time, I'll take him home. And I'm thinking to myself, what is going on? A day later, the only semi-sane person I worked with comes running in from the parking garage and says to me, so someone is unalive in the parking lot. It's a Saturday morning. I just call the cops. We walk outside to this car that was parked in our parking garage in 100-degree weather with the windows up and the trunk open. My coworker recognizes the car when we get closer and said she had kicked him out a couple of days before. When the cops arrived, they didn't actually confirm that this guy was unalived or not, but they did tell us that the trunk that was wide open was full of stolen license plates from all over the country. And after that, I just went back inside to the desk and pretend this wasn't a David Lynch movie. So I was there 11 days and this all happened in the first week. During my second week, we got a guest who had MS and was fleeing an awful relationship. All of her belongings were in her car, and looking at the reservation for her, the front desk had this woman moving every single night for 2 weeks to another room, and she could barely walk. Garbage like this isn't easy to fix if you actually pay attention. I rolled up my sleeves and moved a bunch of one-night stays to other rooms to keep her in this same room for her entire stay. I got in trouble for that, but it's pretty standard hotel practice though, especially because it's easier for housekeepers too. They don't have to do a full checkout clean on an extra room every day. They can just do stay-over service for the person, refreshing their towels, taking out the trash, etc. It just makes sense to keep a long-term or longer-term guest in the same room, especially a disabled guest who really needed a room on the ground floor. I also got chewed out for helping this woman with her luggage. Now, I worked for a company that is an international hotel group previously, as well as the Worst Eastern, and helping older or disabled people with their things is standard practice. This woman had a massive Mac Pro that she needed for work, but couldn't lift it onto the desk in her room, so I did it for her. I climbed around and plugged everything in, and she was delighted. I was told I was wasting my time though on unimportant guests, and I was apparently trying to provide 5-star service in a 2-star hotel. I was so upset, but I stuck it out for a few more days. This one woman would come in every morning to get the breakfast and have her water bottle refilled, and I would put up the "Be Right Back" sign and carry her food back to her room. I did not care about getting in trouble for it, because I'm pretty sure you could have sacrificed a goat in that place and not gotten fired. And then, with all things considered and all the things I had seen already, one day I just kind of snapped. I was tired of getting jumped all over, as well as being treated horribly, with zero support from management, because the manager never came to work. She sat home on her computer all the time with her online girlfriend, who I heard wasn't even real, but Lord, I don't care about that. That morning, the fire alarm, which didn't actually even call the fire department since they had forgotten to pay the bill, suddenly went off every 5 minutes, and no matter how many times I reset it, it just kept screaming. I was tired of working in a place that didn't care about their guests or their employee safety, and literally made 0 cents, and being asked to babysit the dog, as well as getting yelled at for doing my job better than anyone else. With all that combined, I just quit. Of course, everyone tried to talk me out of it, but I was like, nope, I can't stay here another moment. And so my boyfriend picked me up from work and we just left. When we came back to get my last paycheck and to sign the paper that told them why I quit, there was a guy who was just covered in tattoos, even all over his face, asleep on the lobby couch. I went to the table to sign things, and the table was so wobbly that it actually fell off one leg. I handed the paperwork back to them and was handed a handwritten personal check for my wages there. And then after my coworker said, "Oh, by the way, that lady you were taking care of, she passed away that afternoon before you quit. You were probably the last person to see her alive. We didn't notice for at least a day." After hearing that, that absolutely devastated me, because the last thing I did before walking out the door, other than handing in an epic resignation letter detailing all of this nonsense, was take that woman her breakfast. She didn't come down to the lobby, so I called her room before we cleaned up breakfast and asked her if she wanted her usual, and she said she was hungry but couldn't walk down. I asked her if it was okay for me to use the master key to come into her room and bring her food, and she said yes. I loaded up the plate, took it to her room, took her water bottle back to the office to fill it up for her, and took it back to her, and she thanked me. And I locked her room for her, and I went back up front when the fire alarm was going off. It was all so much to handle, and this all happened in 11 days. So with all things considered, this is why I no longer work in the hotel industry. That sounds like an absolute nightmare of a job. Like, quite literally, everything that could have gone wrong pretty much did. You were almost robbed multiple times. You even were robbed, like straight up had money stolen out of your purse, most likely from one of your sketchy front desk coworkers. And it sounds like the guys there were just completely ridiculous, saying terrible things and making these weird insinuations. For the sake of this story and explaining it, I did leave a few things out that were pretty sketchy overall, but trust me when I say this, those guys were not right in the head. So good for you for quitting this job. You knew pretty quickly that this was not for you, and these people probably really did suck at their job. And by no means are you obligated to try and work with those people in the slightest, because in my opinion, it sounds like they did not care about this place in the slightest, and you were going above and beyond to try and make this work. So hopefully, for the safety of anybody that goes in that previous hotel you worked at, it hopefully will get closed down, because the management and the owner truly do not care. Multiple women that I've gone on dates with have said that I am full of red flags, and I don't know what that means, and I seriously don't know what to do with that information. So I got separated last summer after 8 years, with 5 years of dating and 3 years of being married. Nothing like cheating or domestic problems or financial problems, just minor annoyances and personality differences that accumulated over the years that got exacerbated by the pandemic. I moved out on my own in December. We have a 2.5-year-old daughter together, and she spends weekdays with me and weekends with her mom. My baby's mom was my first real girlfriend, and I only had some hookups and short-term flings before dating her. After moving out, I decided to try online dating for the first time, and I used Tinder to do that, as that was the one I heard the most about. I had a surprisingly good run. I hooked up with over 10 girls, and surprisingly, because I heard my friends complain about it all the time, I would drop off my daughter at daycare on Friday mornings for her mom to pick up in the afternoon, and either go on dates to see someone I already knew over the weekend, usually meeting with 2 to 3 women over the weekend. One thing that I did notice is that anyone who is a bit older or has been in a long-term relationship before, so like 6 or 7 of these women, mentions that I am full of red flags or I just seem sketchy. I have never followed up to ask exactly what they mean by that, since I didn't want any more self-hatred or self-doubt than I already have. Honestly, the separation has been a struggle, but the woman I spent some quality time with on Saturday night mentioned the same thing, and now I can't get it out of my head. I have a well-paying career, I'm passionate about it, I treat my daughter like a princess, and I have my own place downtown in a major city, and I own a car. I treat my dates to the best of my abilities as well, with all the bells and whistles, such as researching where to go in advance, dressing well, paying for everything, holding the door open and hanging up their coat for them, as well as cleaning up after them and everything. So my question would be, what could they possibly mean by saying that I'm full of red flags when they all still seem to want me? I want to know, because eventually I want to settle down again and have a family again, and I want to start working on fixing whatever it is that would make me undesirable or dangerous in their eyes for my future partner. What should I do? This is a tough one, because it really does seem like from the outside looking in, you're doing everything right. But for them to say, oh, there's a lot of red flags, and then not give any kind of explanation really sucks. Like, how on earth are you supposed to have any kind of accurate assumption about what it is that you're doing that's freaking people out if nobody can be honest with you and just be like, hey, it's this, and this? So on that end, I probably would not rely on these dates to try and get an accurate description of who you are as a person, but maybe go to somebody close who can give you an honest opinion. Maybe like a friend or a family member who's going to be honest and not just try to gas you up, because right now it seems like you're just left scratching your head, thinking to yourself, wait, what am I doing wrong? And I can completely understand where you're coming from there. So hopefully you're able to find somebody that can kind of give you some more direction in life, because as of right now, just being told multiple times that you have red flags all over the place without knowing what those red flags are in the first place is in and of itself incredibly frustrating. My entitled roommate makes me pay for Wi-Fi that I'm not even actively using, after she gave me the wrong Wi-Fi information, which was actually the information for the guy across the hallway. And when I confronted my roommate about it, she feigned ignorance and dismissed it as quickly as I brought it up, and I've never been more offended in my life. Here's what happened. So first off, I want to say that this was a few years ago. I met my roommate on Facebook. We'll call her Brandy. That's not her real name. And I met her on the Facebook Marketplace section, which honestly was my first mistake. I was struggling to find a place and found this place that was close to my work and within my price range. Brandy had lived in the apartment for a couple of years already and was looking for someone to split the cost of the rent since it had gone up. We seemed to hit it off initially, and after seeing the apartment in person, I agreed to co-lease it with her and split the cost of the utilities. I'm going to be honest, I was 90% sure that this would be fine, but that remaining 10% was a part of me saying that it's fine now, but something is slightly off with her, and I really should have listened to that 10%. Let me paint you a brief picture of Brandy. She came from a lower upper class family, so she was relatively well off. She was somewhat down to earth, but sometimes her ignorance and entitlement really show through very clearly. One example of her ignorance was when she once commented on the water in her boyfriend's apartment and how it always seemed to get hotter faster than the hot water in our apartment. For context, her boyfriend was on the first floor and we were on the third floor of the building. I kind of shrugged it off until she proceeded to say that it was because it took hot water longer to travel up to our apartment. I immediately did a double take and asked her to clarify. Did she mean that it traveled from the lower floor in our building to our floor? But she said no. She then said, it goes from the bottom of the hill to the top of the hill where our apartment was. I tried to explain to her that that's not how hot water works in the slightest, but she kept insisting that it was, so I just dropped it. Once Brandy had made up her mind that she was right, there was absolutely no changing it. No matter how much information information you presented. Another time, her boyfriend got her a very lovely arrangement of red, pink, and purple roses for Valentine's Day. Now, if you've ever ordered flowers, especially for Valentine's Day, you'll know that they can get very expensive. And this was a full bouquet, so it must have been easily up to $150. I came home and commented on how beautiful they were and how sweet it was that he got her flowers. She scoffed and said, "Yeah, but they look like standard cheap arrangements. You could get these anywhere. I'm making him buy me new ones." And when she said that, I was so shocked. All I could really say was, "Oh," and I just walked over to my room. Now, when I moved in, Brandy said that she would pay the bills for utilities since they were already in her name, and just asked that I would Venmo my half to her. She would send me an itemized breakdown every month in the form of a funds request in Venmo, and I would just pay her my half. I guess in hindsight, it was a really naive thing to do, but I agreed. So one day I came home from work when she was getting the internet set up at the apartment. When I moved in, I asked for the password to the Wi-Fi, and she sent me a screenshot of the router with a long generated password, then mentioned she was getting it set up for later that week. I thought that was odd, but I thought maybe she was setting up a specific Wi-Fi just for her work. So when the technician gave her the password, I, of course, asked for it. She froze for a moment, like she was contemplating if she should. Then I said, "Or am I supposed to just use the original one you gave me? Like, is this one separate?" She quickly said, "Yes, just keep using that one." I didn't think anything of it, and I just agreed. For the next 4 months, I continued to pay for my half of the Wi-Fi without another thought. I did think it was strange that sometimes I would plug my Amazon Fire TV into the TV in the living room, and it would buffer a lot. But when she would use her Apple TV, the connection was always smooth. I didn't get an answer until one day when my boyfriend, who we'll call Mark, was over at the house. Mark is not his real name. We were hanging out in the living room when my roommate wasn't home and wanted to connect his Nintendo Switch to the Wi-Fi. I gave him the password, and he immediately pointed out that the signal wasn't very strong. He asked where the router was, and I showed him the one that she had set up. He told me it wasn't the same router, since the picture of the password Brandy had given me was of a Verizon router, and the one in the apartment was a Charter router. We looked for the Verizon one, but couldn't find it in the apartment. So Mark followed the signal on his Switch until he had full bars. We quickly realized that he had a full signal when he was standing in front of our neighbor's door across the hall from us. I then texted my roommate, pretending that I had lost the screenshot of the Wi-Fi password that she had sent me months ago, and asked her if she could send it to me again. Instead, she sent me the login and router details of the Charter Wi-Fi in our apartment. So it was confirmed. She had been charging me for Wi-Fi for 4 months, and I have been stealing Wi-Fi from our neighbors across the hall. Eventually, I confronted Brandy about it, and she feigned ignorance, saying that she didn't remember telling me not to use the Wi-Fi in our apartment, even though I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that she had. When I told her that it wasn't fair for me or the guy across the hallway that she has done this, she retorted by saying, "It's fine. The guy across the way owes me money for something, so it works out." But I pointed out that any money issues between her and the guy across the hallway had nothing to do with me, and that she had lied and stolen $140 from me over the course of the past several months. She insisted that she did nothing wrong and that she didn't owe me anything. I was afraid that she would try to kick me out, although I wasn't aware at the time that I couldn't be kicked out because I co-signed the lease. I had been homeless for a year prior, struggling to find an apartment in a safe neighborhood that I could afford due to my low-paying job. This was the first place that was both in my budget and in a safe neighborhood, and at the time, I couldn't move in with my boyfriend because he didn't make much at the time and lived in a shoebox-sized studio apartment, so I just let it go, and I didn't say anything about it for nearly a year. I thankfully ended up getting it back when I moved out because, much to no one's surprise, we had a huge fight, which then caused me to later move out of the apartment. So overall, I'm really glad that I don't live with Brandy anymore. Brandy in this story sounds like a piece of work. I mean, how absolutely dishonest can you be? She not only lied to you about having to pay for that Wi-Fi, but she also gave you the Wi-Fi information to the guy across the hallway. Like, seriously, that's messed up. And that's not okay in the slightest. But thankfully, it looks like you did get your money back in the end, and you were able to move out of that apartment. And I don't blame you for getting out of there when you could, because your roommate sounded super shady. And in my opinion, it probably would have been only a matter of time until she tries some other sketchy stuff on you. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My wife and my parents don't get along, and I'm tired of dancing around the issue after so many years, and I seriously don't know what to do. For basically the entirety of our time together, which is 5 years being married and 9 years being together together overall, my wife has disliked my parents. My wife is very sensitive and can take things very personally and blow things out of proportion. My parents, who are definitely not without blame in this, can be a bit hard to deal with. My mom is, to be honest, a bit of a narcissist. She's the kind of person that just isn't super warm and can say things without a filter and kind of makes things all about herself. To be honest, it's something I've been aware of, but until I met my wife, I never realized what a problem it was. I think that over time, I've just kind of dealt with it and just wrote off her behavior as that's just mom being mom. But with my wife being so sensitive, I've gotten better at calling my mom out for her behavior, though I admit I don't do it as much as I should. Some other important facts that will be relevant later on is that my wife and I live about 7 hours away from my parents. I have 2 brothers, and both of them live 4 hours from our parents, but in different cities. My wife's parents live about 20 minutes away from us, and we see them often. My wife has high anxiety around seeing my parents, and honestly, it's mostly my mom. She and my wife are just like oil and water, just like in the way I touched on earlier. Part of the reason is that my mom has a history of saying some very unkind things to her, and I admittedly wasn't great about standing up for her in the past. It's something I've gotten a lot better at, but there's still some anxiety on my wife's part. I would bring up the topic of my parents visiting us or even us visiting them once every 3 or 4 months or so, and usually it would start a big fight. I'd say about half the time, my wife would agree to see them. We kind of came to an agreement when my wife said that she wanted to only see them a few times a year, and I agreed, mostly for the sake of keeping the peace. But we'd still get into arguments when I brought up trying to see them. My wife and I have talked about putting up boundaries with my parents, which I am still working on, and I think I'm doing an okay job at it. Our daughter was born 2.5 years ago. I had always assumed, perhaps hopefully, that my parents would change their ways when they became grandparents. I had great relationships with my grandparents on both sides, and was hoping that our daughter would have the same with my parents. However, it hasn't quite been like that. While they haven't been unkind, they're not the kind of grandparents I was hoping they would be. For example, they rarely ask about our daughter unprompted. When we FaceTime them, they'll talk with our daughter for a few minutes, then go off to talk about their own thing. It always feels like they want to be grandparents, but on terms that work for them. I also think it hasn't helped that my wife's parents, who see our daughter often, are the complete polar opposite of my parents. They're your typical lovey-dovey grandparents. In the first year of our daughter's life, my wife had a tough time with postpartum depression. As such, I didn't really push the topic of my parents visiting with her on them. Fortunately though, due to COVID, I was able to kind of push off their request to visit us. But once COVID kind of let up in the spring of 2021, they came down to visit a few times, and it was okay. My parents didn't really interact with our daughter like we had hoped. They played with her a little bit, but they just seemed interested in working on their laptops and playing on their phones. My wife and I were both upset as to how that trip went. A few weeks after that, we went to visit them at their house, but we had to leave early because our daughter got sick. When we left, my parents seemed upset with us and kept saying things like, "Oh, she's not sick, she can stay, it's fine," which really bothered my wife and I. Things then were okay for a few months. We saw my parents a few times, but it was mostly at big events, like weddings, anniversaries, or parties, stuff like that. So they didn't have much one-on-one interaction with our daughter. The last time they saw our daughter in person was for her birthday party. It felt like my parents didn't even spend as much time with our daughter as they did with our niece. While I was a little bit hurt by it, but didn't say anything to keep the peace, my wife was completely distraught. Since then, things between my parents and my wife haven't been great. They've been acting the same. They'll ask us about her intermittently and do the same thing when they're on FaceTime. They've asked me a few times about coming home to visit, but when I bring it up to my wife, her response is, "No, I don't think they've earned the right to visit." My wife is of the mindset that having a relationship with your grandkids is something that's earned, not given. While I agree to an extent, and I don't think that my parents have earned a free pass on everything, I do think that we could stand to foster a bit more of a relationship with them, but my wife won't have it. Things have come to a head when my parents have been trying to plan a week-long vacation with us, and this would include my brothers and their spouses. For some context, my wife and I go to the beach for a week with her family, as do my brothers with their respective in-laws. My parents wanted to also book a vacation house with us, partly because they want to spend time with us, but also because I think they're just jealous. When I brought it up with my wife, it started a minor fight that we ended up compromising, that we wouldn't go for the whole week because she didn't want to spend that much time around my parents, but rather we would just go for about 4 days. I was worried about the optics of how that would look to my parents, but fortunately, neither of my brothers and their families could stay for the whole week either. I texted my parents to let them know that we'd only be there for 4 days, and everything everything absolutely hit the fan. I received a text from my mom saying how sad and frustrated they are at how they haven't built the relationship with our daughter that they want to, and that they were hoping to spend the entire week with her. She also added that they keep wanting to come see us, but I keep pushing them away. My mom then went on to say how she never had a relationship with her grandmother and that she would be sick if our daughter had the same relationship. She then went on to say how all three of her sons had great relationship with our grandparents and that we, meaning my parents, never stood in the way of those relationships. Anyways, with all things considered, I'm just at my wit's end with this. I can't exactly say, well, mom, a big reason why I keep dodging your visits is because my wife hates you and your visits cause massive anxiety. I feel like I've been able to put up this charade to them that everything is fine, but this feels like a house of cards that's about to fall over. Honestly, I just want everyone to get along, and I hate that both my mom and my wife are upset at me, but both sides just keep digging their heels further into the ground, and I'm not sure how to keep the peace, and I seriously don't know what to do. Honestly, it doesn't sound like your wife is sensitive, but in reality, I kind of feel like your mom is just a jerk. And sure, maybe it feels like you're making a choice between your wife and your mom, but in reality, this is not a choice. You need to pick your wife first, to be completely honest with you. You put up with your mom's behavior because you were a kid, and you didn't know any better, and you didn't know how to cope. But now you're an adult, and you made a promise to your wife that you would be with her and that you would choose her first. And from what I'm reading, it really seems like you're putting a lot of the blame on your wife in the first place. You're pushing it aside as if she's being sensitive, when in reality, she's probably being reasonable, and you just have been gaslit so much that you don't see how toxic your mom really is. And maybe this is a hard thing for you to come to grips with, which honestly would not be surprising. It is your mom after all, so you feel the need to keep the peace because that's what you've done your entire life. And let's face the facts, your wife doesn't want them visiting because she knows she can't rely on you to handle your parents. You literally don't have her back. In fact, your post really kind of leans on the fact that your wife is the center of blame and that her refusal to spend time around these people who mistreat her is somehow unreasonable. And instead of being honest with your parents and telling them exactly how it is, you're literally shifting the blame over to your wife. And that really seems like the perspective that you're coming from when it comes to this post. Because at the end of the day, your wife is looking out for herself and her daughter, because clearly it doesn't look like you are. And that's not fair in the slightest. And I really don't think you're the middleman either, because honestly, it seems like your wife is the front man, and you're just standing behind it and saying, oh, there's nothing I could do about it. So in my opinion, I think you need to set some serious boundaries while also apologizing to your wife, because she's put up with this for quite a while now, and it seriously should not have gotten this bad in the first place. My mom would try to make me promise as a child that I would take care of her and give her money when I become an adult, and I'm just now reflecting on it and it seriously freaks me out. So this is a random memory that popped up in my head today, but this feels so messed up now that I'm thinking about it. Ever since I was a little kid, my mom would ask me weird, off-the-wall questions, as well as make me promises to her. It ranged from her asking, am I a good mom? All the way up to, are you gonna take care of me as an adult rather than put me in a nursing home? Promise you'll take care of me? And I never thought these were weird until she kept asking me even as a teenager. But what really gets me is how she would make me promise to give her part of my REZ check once I hit 18. She would do so in a way that would seem so innocent, but incredibly binding, as if she fully expected to remind me about it if I never paid her. For those of you who don't know, an REZ check is money given to people who descend from Native American tribes and have rights to the reservations. My dad is part of such a tribe and has been receiving a couple $1,000s every month since he was about 18 years old, and I was set to start collecting these checks myself once I turned 18 as well. Sadly, due to a bunch of political garbage between the Native councils and the American government, my blood was considered too diluted to receive these checks. But I mean, oh well, I can't miss what I never had. But this made my mom really upset though. Eventually though, it hit me as an adult that my mom was trying to get me to promise her that I would give her half of it growing up. It was a frequent conversation where she would be like, you promised to take care of mommy? Are you really going to let me have a portion of your money? And she would do this for as long as I can remember. Honestly, it really ticks me off thinking about it. How did she not see how weird and toxic that behavior was? I don't know. Maybe she was just super insecure, and due to her disability, she was looking for a way to get paid since she felt she couldn't work anymore or something like that. Luckily, now she's overcome those insecurities and learned to live independently with her disability, even getting a job where she makes a decent amount of money that she doesn't know what to do with. She sends me and my family money for special occasions and doesn't ask me any of these weird questions anymore. Not even about living with me now that I have a house and a family of my own. Still though, though, I have to wonder what went through her head when she would try and make a child promise that they would pay her once she became of age. It's honestly weird, and I'm so glad that I don't have to do that. Your mom was seriously being super sketchy. I mean, that's crazy. You don't do that to a child, let alone a 6-year-old who doesn't know any better. So I think you're on the right track. You can't miss what you never had. So it really is a good thing that you never had to give any money to her in the first place. And it's also nice that she found a job of her own that pays really well. That way she can have some semblance of freedom and independence while also respecting you and your money. My mom gets very upset that I'm independent now and that I now don't always have to take her advice. But as a result of me setting some boundaries, she's gotten upset and decided to take it all out on me all of the sudden. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So for context, I'm 23 years old and my mom is 54. I am the only child of my parents and have been close with both of them. I graduated college in May of 2022 and started dating my boyfriend a month prior in April of 2022. I've been thankfully working as a teacher since August of 2022, and I have become very independent, from making my own money to living with my boyfriend. And you know what? I feel like this upsets and angers my mom, and I feel like she wants to control me even though I am a responsible adult. Since October, I have had a plethora of medical issues that haven't been resolved, and this is even after a general surgeon's intervention a few times. I asked the surgeons back in November if seeing a specialist would have been beneficial, but they did not think so at the time, so I just followed their orders. The whole time, my mom was very opinionated about the whole thing and has always lacked trust in doctors for whatever reason. She was upset and still reminds me to this day that I should have advocated for myself more and seen the specialist. She constantly makes me feel bad about it and how I prolonged any healing. I explained that I obviously can't go back in time and I have to make the best of the situation now, but it's never a sufficient answer. Another thing with her is her drinking. My boyfriend and I are clearly of legal drinking age, and we like to enjoy a drink or two with our meals. Neither of us nor any family members have struggled with alcohol or made any poor decisions regarding drinking. She constantly grills me about it though. She simply doesn't see the need for us to drink as often as we do, and has even said the same to my half-brother and his wife. She tries to say that my drinking is impeding me from healing from all my medical issues, despite getting a green light from the doctor. Today, I explained to her how she doesn't have to understand or support every decision I make, and back in January, I asked her to please only give advice if and when I ask for it. If I don't take it, she gets frustrated. She gets passive-aggressive and says that no one cares, or she puts herself down by claiming, "I know, I'm just the jerk of the family." She even started crying because my grandparents and brother don't always take her advice, and this is advice that she gives out without anyone asking for it, and she decided that now was a good time to take that out on me as well. She even told me today that she is going to give advice and her opinion regardless of what anybody else thinks, because she's my mother and she can. And she also tried to make it seem like I said they have not supported me whatsoever, which isn't true. Once I stood up for myself and I told her that I don't owe them an explanation for my decisions and assured them that I am responsible, she just straight up hung up on me. I'm at a loss right now. I'm sure she thinks that because I'm 23, have a job, and have a boyfriend who's older than me, that I think I know it all somehow. But I'm honestly tired of all of this. Has anyone ever had an experience similar to this? What should I do? The way your mom is acting is ridiculous. You really are an adult, and you can make decisions for yourself. And it sounds like your mom is just upset because now you can make your own decisions, and she literally plays no role in that in the slightest. And that's seriously not your fault. That is literally and completely only on your mother. But you know what? You've made your wishes known. You've drawn a line in the sand, and you've decided, hey, this is my boundary, and I don't want you to cross it anymore. It's not like you're saying, oh, I don't want you in my life anymore, because your mom is certainly trying to twist it in that way, and she's trying to make it seem like you just don't want her around anymore, which is completely inaccurate, and I seriously would not entertain that for a second. So hopefully your mother can come around and see some kind of reason, because the way she's acting is ridiculous, and you really didn't do anything wrong by setting up some personal boundaries. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below. I would love to hear what you have to say. But also, please subscribe to Am I the Jerk and hit the bell to turn on notifications. We're making videos like this all the time, and we would love to see you come back for more. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you in the next video.